Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of African Space. I am your co host, Fabrice Lena, and your host, Naloa B. We shall be having another interactive and interesting conversation this evening. I am speaking from Yaoundé, Cameroon. We apologize for the late beginning of this space due to some technicalities and difficulties. Notwithstanding, we will be starting in a jiffy. So we would like to call everyone to share the space link to our network timeline so that many people can come on board because the objective is to have as many people as possible as the message can go across. Bonjour tout le monde. Je suis Fabrice Lena depuis Yaoundé, Cameroun. Bienvenue encore dans une nouvelle édition de Space avec Nalo Abi sur les effets de malgouvernance en Afrique. Donc, on s'excuse d'abord pour le retard de cette Space. C'est à cause de certains problèmes de réseau des problèmes de réseau qui n'étaient pas très bien. Et il faut partager le lien de cette space à tout le monde pour qu'on puisse avoir beaucoup de participants. Merci beaucoup. Dans quelques instants, on va vous introduire les différents intervenants de notre space. Voilà. Thank you very much. Just give few minutes for us to have our speakers in the house to bring them up at the speaker space dash and also to start the conversation as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Share the space. So once more, welcome everyone. This is a scheduled space with selected experts in areas of governance, politics, human rights, um, community engagement, community development. This is a space to talk about effects of bad governance in Africa, and our speakers are selected from some African countries, cross section of speakers from different African countries. So we will be introducing our speakers right away. We will have Mr. Serge Hope, who will be intervening from the Republic of Senegal. We will be giving his profile very soon. We will have Ramatu Delacroix, a Chadian activist based in France. We will have Bernard Morona, activist and politician from Ghana. We will also have Amin Idris, politician and political analyst from the Republic of Chad. We will have Mr. Kabambi Jire, human rights activist from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We will have Hope Well Ching Onu, Mr. Hope Ching Onu from the Republic of Zimbabwe. He is a journalist. So I am Fabrice Lena, your co-host, a human rights defender, a politician, a leadership coach from the Republic of Cameroon. with the host Naloa B, a refugee of the southern Cameroons in Germany. So you're all welcome to this space. It is a space for everyone. It's going to be very, very interactive. And here in this space, our basic rule is that no one knows everything, everyone knows something. So we're here to exchange ideas and to participate actively. All listeners are given opportunities to ask questions, to make contributions, to have suggestions and remarks as the conversation unfolds just after all the speakers must have presented their perspective of the topic we are presenting. So, giving a brief bow of some of our speakers, I will start with Mr. Serge Hope. He is of an Ivorian father and Senegalese mother. He is a computer scientist who works on information system, specialist in humanitarian organizations, and active, passionate about politics, justice, and equity. He is host of conferences on themes around social justice, politics, and deeply committed to the sovereignty of Africa and the total freedom of the African people beyond boundary of the African continent.
Hello, Sesh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I think that Fabrice has some issues with his network.
I don't know if Fabrice is offline because I think his internet is not stable as well.
Yeah, it looks like yeah. Maybe he could leave and come back.
Okay, I guess he already gave you the floor, right?
Oh yeah, okay. I was just listening to him when he was introducing me. But yeah, okay. So did he ask a question or how it's working?
No, he didn't ask a question. I think he said you were the first speaker.
Oh, okay. Okay, fine then. I was waiting for a question, but yeah, never mind. I think that he had very good presentation of myself. I'm not sure that I'm as good as he said, but yeah, think that it will work for me. It's fine for me. So, Malo, I don't know. We are going to speak French and English, or English and French, or only English in this space.
Can you repeat that, please?
Are we going to speak English only, French only, or English and French at the same time?
Fabrice is an expert in French,
Yeah.
and so if he's not here, I don't know how the audience, they're going to understand you because I think majority of the audience is English
English.
speaking.
Okay. Never mind. I'm going to try to speak English with. I'm not that good in English, but yeah, I'm gonna try. Okay, so I'm Serge Hope. I'm actually living in Senegal. I'm born in Senegal also. I'm mixed Ivorian and Senegalese. Yeah. But as Fabrice said, I'm an activist. First of all, I'm a computer scientist. I'm working in an NGO, Doctor Without Borders. I think some of you guys already know this NGO, and I'm a computer scientist. But after all this, I'm an activist, and I'm always fighting for good governance here, but also for human rights and yeah, for justice in Africa. I'm a believer. All the day I'm saying that Africa has to be the first continent in this world We can't be rich and poor at the same time. That's why I'm working, but I'm fighting for human rights. But also I say that in Africa, we are facing bad governance since a long time. I mean, we always work in bad governance. That's why I'm happy to join this space today. Maybe with your question that you are going to ask, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think on this matter. Yeah. But hello, can you hear me? Or maybe I have some issue.
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, I couldn't hear it.
Okay, thank you very much, Serge. Okay, what I think the listeners want to know from you is about exactly what is going on in Senegal. You know, a lot of us are Africans, but we are just by name. We hardly know what is going on in other parts of Africa. To be able to help each other, we need to understand what's going on in terms of governance, human rights, um, leadership, you know, arrest. We need to know what's going on. The only way we can help you it's if we know what is going on. So as an activist from Senegal, we believe that whatever it is you are telling us is what is on the ground.
Okay. Yeah, actually in Senegal we are facing lack of democracy. First of all, we are facing lack of democracy. We are facing it since a long time. Yeah, but with the actual government with President Macky Sall, I mean we are facing it more and more. Lack of democracy. How we can see it. Actually, some of us activists are not so free to speak even on the social network. Why? Because you can work at the morning and in the evening they can come to tell you bring you to prison. No. Yesterday, just an example. Yesterday, Guy Marissanya, maybe some of you guys in the space already know him. He's an activist and actually a deputy. But what happening to him yesterday? He was protesting in the Tunisia embassy, just in front of the Tunisia embassy, and the guy passed his night in the prison. That's just an example I'm giving you. And in March 2021, 14 children was killed in in our areas in Senegal, in Dakar, between Dakar and Ziguinchor, because they were protesting because one of the opposition leader, Usman Sonko, was arrested. That's why I'm saying actually we are facing lack of democracy. The other thing is that mm, we're also facing bad governance. Just 1 or 2 months ago, Mrs. Marine Le Pen, who is actually in opposition in France, came here. That one is a racist one and was hosted by the president of Senegal. And this morning, one of our former prime minister said that Miss Marine Le Pen went home with 7 billion CFA in Senegal. That's some of bad governance, bad thing we are seeing in our countries actually. Yeah, Senegal is known in Africa as a good country, as a democratic country, but all of that is just what we can see out of this country. But living in this country, when we live in this country, we can see that we have many, many issues of democracy. We have many issues with bad governance, actually.
Thank you very much, Serge. We appreciate your contribution from Senegal. I want to introduce the next speaker. You are going to permit us to deal with the network issues that is coming up from time to time. But like I said, I will be co-hosting with Nalowa, be the host. If there is any issue, both of us will try to intervene at one point or the other. So our next speaker is from Chad, and I'm just going to read her profile right now, and then I will send her the invite. I think she's there. Okay, yeah, she's there. So, Ramatu Delacroix. Ramatu Delacroix, elle est activiste tchadienne. Elle est chef d'entreprise et elle est aussi co-gérant d'une brasserie en France. Elle s'intéresse beaucoup aux problèmes politiques, sociaux, des droits humains, de la justice, de l'éducation et aussi surtout la place des femmes en Afrique. Donc, Ramatou, elle est très actif dans plusieurs spaces à Twitter et elle fait vraiment les contributions importantes pour le sujet des places des femmes, sujet politique et les problèmes politiques. Et notre sujet aujourd'hui, c'est les effets des malgouvernances en Afrique. Comment on peut comprendre les effets de malgouvernance et comment on peut améliorer les situations pour nos confrères ou bien pour nos continents. Donc, je veux passer le micro à Ramatou. Elle est là, mais apparemment.
Je suis là, monsieur Fabrice. Je ne sais pas si vous m'entendez.
On t'entend bien, Ramatou.
Ah, ok, Serge, tu m'entends? Naloa, tu m'entends? Fabrice, est-ce que tu m'entends?
Fabrice, il est pas.
Our next speaker. Ok, Ramatou est déjà là. Oui, bonjour Ramatou.
Bonjour Fabrice, merci pour ce space. Merci à Miss Naloa. Comme je vous ai dit, je vais intervenir en français. Si vous voulez.
Je peux faire un résumé en anglais, comme il y a majorité de nos auditeurs qui sont anglo-saxons de la base. Merci Ramatou.
Après, je vous laisse faire le résumé en anglais. Comme j'ai dit, je parle pas anglais. Je vais apprendre. Je laisse Serge faire le résumé.
Ramatou, are you there?
Est-ce qu'il m'entend? Il m'entend pas, je crois.
Ouais, Fabrice a des problèmes de connexion. Il faut qu'il sorte pour revenir parce qu'il t'entend pas. Fabrice, tu n'arrives pas à l'entendre. Ramatou, en fait, c'est Fabrice qui a des soucis de connexion.
D'accord. Alors, je te laisse, Serge, après le soin de faire la traduction parce que je suis une pure francophone et je parle un peu arabe.
Vous m'écoutez? Serge, vous m'écoutez?
Oui, Fabrice, on t'entend. Je pense que tu dois sortir et revenir parce que Ramatou ne t'entend pas. Enfin, tu n'entends pas Ramatou plutôt.
Ah, mais Ramatou, vous l'entendez?
Oui, on l'entend très bien.
Ok, allez-y Ramatou, vous pouvez parler. Oui, vous pouvez parler Ramatou, allez-y.
Ok, merci beaucoup, monsieur Fabrice, Naloa, merci, bonsoir à tout le monde. Je sais que la majorité de ceux qui sont là sont nos frères anglophones d'Afrique. Et je vais laisser monsieur Serge après faire la traduction. Alors, moi, je suis de nationalité tchadienne. Comme il l'a expliqué, il a déjà expliqué ce que je fais. J'ai commencé à prendre conscience au fait de la malgouvernance de mon pays et j'ai commencé à pouvoir donner mon opinion et aussi être du côté du peuple quand il y a eu la fin du règne Idriss Déby au Tchad. Le père Idriss Déby. Pour ceux qui connaissent le Tchad, le monsieur est resté 32 ans au pouvoir. Mais ce qu'on ne sait pas de Idriss Déby, c'est que bien avant d'être président du Tchad, il était le chef d'état-major sous Hissène Habré pendant 6 ans. Avant de quitter le Tchad pour aller à l'école de guerre en France en 88, en 89, il a pris les armes pour renverser Hissène Habré en 90. Aujourd'hui, les effets de la malgouvernance au Tchad sont simples. Les effets de la malgouvernance au Tchad, c'est la misère totale, l'accès à l'électricité qui est moins de 10% pour 17 millions de population, l'accès à l'eau potable où pratiquement 15 millions de Tchadiens n'ont pas accès à cela, l'accès à des soins de santé et à l'éducation. Le taux d'analphabétisation est entre 70 et 75%. L'alphabétisation, l'éducation, aujourd'hui au Tchad concerne peut-être que 15% de la population. Les effets de la malgouvernance au Tchad, c'est que l'indice de développement humain, on est le dernier sur le continent. Ou l'un des derniers, en tout cas, on est toujours entre les 3 derniers sur le continent. Et ça continue. Alors qu'on est un pays, avant la production du pétrole en 2003, on était un pays d'agriculture, d'élevage et un pays de producteurs de coton au Tchad. On a par exemple, en 2020, excusez-moi parce que j'ai eu un appel. En 2020-2021, on avait 130 millions de têtes de bétail. Aujourd'hui, une famille tchadienne vit peut-être avec moins d'1 $ ou de 2 $. On a torpillé la Constitution, ne serait-ce que même sur le climat. Aujourd'hui, vous avez par exemple, il y a eu des inondations au Tchad. Il y a quelques mois de cela, plus de 500 000 personnes n'avaient plus de maison, ils se retrouvaient dehors. Aujourd'hui, je vais vous dire la vérité, le Tchad est le dernier pays pour moi en Afrique, en termes de tout. On a un pays qui n'est pas industrialisé, on a un pays qui n'a pas d'infrastructure, on a un pays qui ne répond pas à l'éducation nationale, qui ne répond pas aux justices, à l'état de droit, ni même, et je vais finir par le truc, c'est que il n'y a pas que des femmes, en fait. Moi, je suis une féministe, je l'avoue, mais je fais un combat qui est pour tout le monde, y compris les hommes, les femmes. C'est le fait de respecter les droits humains de tout un chacun. Aujourd'hui, quand vous êtes opposant et que vous ne voulez pas être du côté du pouvoir, soit vous allez en exil, soit on vous envoie directement 6 pieds sous terre dans la tombe. Soit vous êtes mort, soit vous vous retrouvez en exil. Le fils d'Ebi, aujourd'hui, passera président et le Tchad n'avancera pas. 20 octobre 2022, suite à des manifestations, il y a eu 237 morts. 2000 jeunes déportés en plein milieu du désert. Comme si on était encore à l'époque du nazisme ou de l'apartheid. Tout simplement dans leur propre pays. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire en ce qui concerne le Tchad. Alors qu'on est un pays qui est producteur de pétrole, on est un pays qui est l'un des plus grands producteurs de bétail en Afrique, dans la sous-région. On a un pays d'agriculture, mais on a une superficie qui fait 2 fois et demi la France, avec 17 millions de personnes. Et ces 17 millions de personnes, 80 à 90% vivent dans la misère totale, même pas dans la pauvreté. Voilà la situation du Tchad. En ce qui concerne les femmes, l'État est absent parce qu'il y aura toujours l'excision au Tchad, il y a toujours des mariages forcés au Tchad, et il y a toujours ce qu'on appelle la femme objet au Tchad, tout simplement, pour beaucoup de femmes d'entre nous. Merci beaucoup et puis je suis à votre disposition. Serge, si tu peux faire la traduction, ça m'arrangerait beaucoup pour nos frères anglophones.
Je suis tellement pas sûr parce que tu as dit beaucoup de choses. Écoute-moi, mon anglais, il n'est pas meilleur que le tien, hein, après tout, Amatou. Nalo, are you there? Alors, je veux bien traduire, mais je pense qu'il faut déjà que les hôtes et les co-hosts soient là, Amatou.
Yes,
Nalo,
Serge.
yeah,
Serge, you
okay.
can translate.
I'm not sure I'm able to translate all that she said, but yeah. Ramatou, tu me diras si je me trompe. Hein. She just said that she started fighting bad governance after Mr. Davy died. Yeah, Ramatou, c'est ce que tu as dit, non? Que tu as compris, que tu as vraiment fait face, que tu as commencé à combattre la mauvaise gouvernance après la mort de M. Davy. Parce que c'est une partie que j'ai sautée, je ne sais pas si on peut
C'est
regarder.
tout à fait
Ok,
ça.
parfait. Je ne voulais pas me tromper.
Quand j'ai vu la misère dans les yeux du peuple tchadien quand je suis allé au Tchad en
Ok.
2020 et en 2021 après la mort de Déby.
Exactly. Yeah. Just she started this fight and in 2021 after Mr. Davy died, and she also knew that no, bad governance is seen in his country by lack of electricity, water, scholarship. Only under 15% of the population is actually studying in a normal school, and most of the children are living with less than $1 a day. So she just said that this is exactly how you can see bad governance in her country, and she knows that also Déby, the son of the former president, Mr. Deby actually will be the president after this transition working, and she's also pessimist, and she knows that things won't change actually in her country, and they have to fight for that. Je pense que pour un résumé de tout ce que tu as dit, en tout cas, moi, c'est ce que j'ai retenu, Ramatou, c'est que tu comptes bien, afin que les gens devront se battre beaucoup contre des défis, etc., parce que les choses ne sont pas parties pour changer. And also
Et il
something
faut
else
aussi se battre contre la France parce qu'aujourd'hui, Déby Fils est le favori de la France pour pouvoir le garder au pouvoir. Et c'est la France qui tient, voilà.
Okay, they'll also have to fight against France because the actual president of the transition, Mr. Deby, son of the former president, is also protected by France. And also, Ramatou said that in her country, in Chad, if you are in the opposition, you only have two solutions: going to exile or you are going to die. Lately, Ramatou, c'était quand on a tué les gens chez vous après
le 20 octobre, après une manifestation pacifique
yes.
pour le retour à l'ordre constitutionnel, 237 morts.
Ok, in October 2022, tu as dit combien? 200?
237 morts.
Okay, 237 people died because they were fighting against this bad governance. They were asking for a new government, for a new president, but 237 of them was killed. Je pense qu'en gros, c'est ce que tu as dit. Je peux me tromper, mais je pense que c'est le point que j'avais retenu, Ramato. Thanks. Now, go ahead. It's fine for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Kamatsu. I don't know if you understand English, but I really appreciate you coming on such a short notice. I'm so sorry about what is going on in Chad. I guess it's the same for the rest of Africa. That's why we all are gathered here today as the future of tomorrow. We are hoping that as we keep going with these spaces, some solutions will come out of it someday. Maybe not immediately, but we are all hoping that along the way, we will have solutions maybe for our generations to come. So our next speaker is from Zimbabwe. His name is Hopewell. He has a very elaborate profile. So Hopewell, if you're listening to me, I don't think I can read it all out. So I think it will be preferable if you tell us a little bit about yourself. And I understand you want to talk to us about the continuous arrest of journalists in Zimbabwe, various human rights abuses that have been existing for a very, very long time. So if you are listening to me, please can you unmute yourself?
Thank you very much, and good evening to everybody who's listening to this Twitter Spaces. I would like to thank you for convening this gathering. It's important as Africans to engage with each other and listen to our problems and see how we can help each other, especially with solidarity. I'm a Zimbabwean journalist, documentary filmmaker, and anti-corruption activist. In Zimbabwe, we had a coup in 2017 where some thought that things were going to be different because we had been under the yoke of Robert Mugabe's rule for 37 years, where we had had a genocide into the south of the country, and there was continuous brutality against citizens. Elections were being rigged, and public funds were being ruthlessly looted. The country's natural resources were being plundered by a few cabal of thieving political elites. And so Zimbabweans thought that things were going to be different after the coup of 2017, but things have gotten worse. The plunder of the natural resources has gotten worse. Al Jazeera has got a 4-part documentary that is going to come out anytime soon, exposing that. And Zimbabwean journalists, including myself, have been trying to talk about this problem, which is caused Sorry, Naloa, can you mute your mic because there's echo coming back? Thank you. So because of the problems we were facing, it became quite evident that the corruption that is taking place in the state, driven by ZANU-PF, has caused problems where our hospitals do not have medication, our schools do not have books, citizens do not have clean drinking water in their homes. 95% of our potential job workforce is out of work, and nothing seems to be working. The roads are potholed. So, I discovered through reading a newspaper article that there was a COVID fund, 60 million COVID fund, which had been put in place, but it was being looted by the political elites. And so I started investigations, which led me to Namibia, South Africa, Dubai, Hungary, and Switzerland. And as I did that, I was being intimidated by the ruling party. Their official spokesperson at that time, a man called Patrick Chinamasa, held a press conference where I was specifically warned in person that if I continued with what I was saying, there will be consequences. And indeed, on the 20th of July, there were consequences in 2020. They came to my house. 7 gunmen came to my house from the state. Some were from the state security, some were from the police. They broke into my house, hitting my French door with the butt of an AK-47, and dragged me out of my house, walking on top of broken glass without any shoes. I spent over 45 days. I was denied bail 3 times and got it on the 4th time. And it became clear that the judiciary was part or was being used to persecute me. And at the time when I said it, the government and the ruling party were saying, no, I was trying to foment an uprising in Zimbabwe, which was not true. Eventually, the case was thrown out after a year and a half. So this shows that it's difficult for journalists to operate in Zimbabwe. I was subsequently arrested 2 more times. The 3rd time, I was arrested using a law that does not even exist. The 2nd time, I was arrested for exposing that the president's niece, who had been caught with 6 kilograms of gold trying to smuggle it to Dubai, was going to get bail unopposed. And other journalists have been arrested as well, covering elections or just trying to do their work where people have been beaten up by the police. Journalists get arrested. Right now, we've got a member of parliament, a political prisoner who has been in prison for over 260 days without bail. His name is Job Scala. And there's somebody with their mic on. They keep talking. Naloa, there's somebody who is talking, so I will stop.
Oh my God.
Yeah, sorry. These kind of people always come on space to disturb. So I don't know how he speak. He was accepted to speak. So I just removed him from the space. Sorry about that, Mr. Chinwo. Sorry.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, my brother. I'll proceed. So the situation has gotten worse now in Zimbabwe because even musicians are being targeted for singing not against the government, but for singing against corruption. So yesterday, one of the biggest reggae musicians in Zimbabwe, called Wingy D, he was removed from stage and his show was stopped by the police when he started singing an anti-corruption song. It does not castigate the government. It does not castigate the ruling party. It's simply talking about how corruption is happening in Zimbabwe. So one wonders that why would a government, why would a regime, why would a ruling party be worried about a musician who is actually singing against corruption? I think the answer is quite clear why they are worried about that. Today, another big singer called Baba Harare had his show stopped in Chitungwiza, which is a dormitory town next to Harare. Again, it means that the police and other state institutions are now being used to police art, to police what musicians sing. The same police and the judiciary are used to control what journalists say. The same police and the judiciary are being used to control what politicians say and what they do. The biggest opposition party in Zimbabwe, called Triple C, has not been able to hold rallies in Zimbabwe. Its leader has not been able to, he's been stopped from even planting trees. Something so harmless as planting trees. And if you protest, they arrest you and they throw you into prison. So the situation we were under Robert Mugabe, unfortunately, is better than what we are right now under Emerson Mnangagwa and his ZANU-PF outfit. And as we head towards the general election, which is supposed to take place in August, our fear is that people are not going to be able to express their choice during this general election. A lot more people will be arrested for trying to do something that is underwritten by the Constitution. I'm still going to court for exposing corruption, which involves gold smuggling, a gold smuggler who's related to the president and who's part of the ZANU-PF thieving cabal. And this is ongoing. And other journalists like myself, young journalists, are now afraid of doing their work properly. They are afraid of exposing corruption because they look at someone like me with an international profile and they wonder, if they can do it to this guy, what more to us? So I think it's important also for Africans as Africans to have solidarity for each other. And I would like you to familiarize yourself with the story of Mr. Job Scala, who is a member of parliament, who is a political prisoner, who has been in prison for over 260 years, and amplify his story to the rest of the continent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've finished speaking.
Naloa, Fabrice.
Thank you very much, Hopewell, for the I don't know what to say, but it looks like Zimbabwe needs the help of Africa, and I think it needs the help of all of us currently. I think maybe it's time that if there is a problem in Zimbabwe, or there is something that the Zimbabweans think that as a whole, like Africans, we can help them, they could always reach out to us. Maybe it's a campaign that they want to do, maybe a Twitter campaign, Facebook, Instagram. It doesn't really matter how. Maybe protest. It doesn't really matter. I'm very sure that there are many of us out here who wouldn't mind taking part in a protest from other countries, as long as it's a good cause, and that's why we are all here today, to make sure that we are each other's keeper. We can't do it alone. No one can do it alone. Currently, where I come from is more or less like Sudan I grew up knowing. When I was growing up, the only thing I knew about Sudan was war, children dying, women dying, famine, all those sort of things. Where I come from currently is experiencing the same thing. And we have been trying all we can to make the world to understand that we need help. And most of our brothers in Africa barely know about what is going on with us. That's why we thought it would be a nice thing that we come together like this once a month and try to tell each other what we are going through in our respective countries, how we can help each other, which I think it's very important. Imagine people from all over Africa supporting Zimbabwe in something useful, something important. something that will effect change. I think it will be stronger than just allowing them to fight on their own. You know, we are hoping that at the end of the space today, people will come up with possible solutions to the problems. We shouldn't come here every month and cry over our problems while those in charge just keep doing it, and then every month we come here to cry. We need to look for possible solutions, and we're hoping that at the end of today those solutions will come out of from this house. Maybe not all, but at least most of it. So our next speaker is going to be Amin Idris. He is from Chad, and luckily for us, he speaks English. So, Amin, if you are listening to us, please can you unmute your mic and introduce yourself to us?
All right. Good evening, Naloa. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
We
Maybe you
hear
can
you.
mute your mic, so that's going to be better. So, good evening to you, and good evening, everyone. Thank you actually for inviting me tonight to speak about the effects of bad governance in Africa. I think that effects of bad governance are well known. We don't necessarily need actually to talk about them. It would be much better to speak about what solutions. But I think since that's the theme of the evening, let me start with the bad governance, and especially the how to say that to demonstrate how can bad governance actually reduce the prospects of development in our continent. Basically, let's start by the mismanagement of resources. And bad governance usually actually lead to the mismanagement of resources, which actually.
I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that the first one actually is really first of the consequence of bad management, bad governance actually is the mismanagement of our resources, and of course, bad governance can lead to the mismanagement of resources, which can also limit the amount of funding which is available for development. Let's say, bad management is also I would say lack of transparency, and lack of transparency in government actually can lead to corruption and misappropriation of funds, hindering the progress of development projects. Bad governance is also political instability. Political instability in government can create environment. Maybe you can just
everybody.
take him back to auditors instead of speaker.
Can you hear me? I'm now a speaker.
Hello, Amin?
Yeah, can you maybe take him as a listener, because otherwise he will keep coming back, and bring him back later.
Yeah, I think he doesn't really know how to use Twitter. I will just call him on the phone. That's okay. You can continue. I'm so sorry about that.
All right. All right. So I was talking about political instability in government that actually can create an environment that is not really conducive for development, because investors are less likely to invest in countries with uncertain political climate. Bad governance is also an ineffective, I would say, public service. This is really one of the biggest problems we have in the continent, and this one lead usually as well to lack of, let's say, infrastructure. Of course, if you want to share examples, we have many. We can actually single out a few countries if you want. Let's say usually we speak about Nigeria or Zimbabwe. We can bring up Ethiopia. We can bring actually Chad. We can bring up Cameroon, Sudan, Democratic Republic of Congo. In most of our countries, there is always corruption, which is really widespread. There is also, I would say, economic mismanagement. We have as well violation of human rights, abuse actually of human rights in most of in most of our countries. We have as well a huge history of authoritarian rule and repression of dissent in all our countries, and we have as well, of course, I will say, somehow a way actually for leaders not only to repress but also to try to keep the power almost forever, or sometimes not only they would try to keep the power for themselves, but they would try as well to transmit the power actually to their children, to their families. So we end up in some countries like Chad, for instance, where we have a kind of dynastical transmission of power from the dad to the son. Chad is not the only example. I think in the French-speaking countries, we have, I think with Chad, we're going to have like 3 already. You know, we had Togo in a while, we had Gabon not long time ago, and now we have Chad like 2 years ago. And you can actually see that in some other places as well, people start actually whispering about the possibility for the leaders to try to unsettle actually the rules and the constitutions, so that actually that will help them, of course, to transmit the power to their children. And this because we have usually weak institutions. Many African countries have weak institutions that are not really capable of delivering basic services or enforcing the rule of law. So if you have weak institution, usually the leader actually can do whatever he wants or whatever she wants. We have as well some historical factors like the legacy of colonialism and the slave trade, which is actually, it did end a long time ago, but that has left many African countries with political and social structures that are not really conducive for good governance. So many African countries also have really history of ethnic and religious conflict, which have undermined the stability of their institutions. And this history of religious or ethnic conflicts have been somehow structured during the colonial era. You have as well economic factors like poverty and inequality that are widespread in many African countries, and they contribute, of course, to bad governance by creating a culture of impunity and lack of accountability. The thing here is that we all wonder if poverty and inequality are the consequences of bad governance, or bad governance are the consequences of poverty and inequality. They are interlinked. So the interlinkages are so many. Of course, you have as well the political factors. Many African countries with weak political, have actually weak political parties that are not really able to provide strong opposition to the ruling party. And this has created situations where the ruling party actually can act with impunity, knowing that there is no real opposition to hold it accountable. Besides that, there is no even civil societies in our countries, and where they exist, they are very weak, or they are being created. They have been created and pushed and fueled by the ruling parties. So now we know the situation, but how can we actually fix the issue of bad governance in Africa? And I think that there are several ways actually to go with. First one is to work as civil society to strengthen our institutions. And African countries, we need to strengthen actually our institutions, starting by the judiciary or the police, and more specifically even the civil service. I do think that if you attack, you want really to go and fix the judiciary today or the police today, you may face problems, you may face challenges. But trying actually to address the weakness of the civil service may be a good start, because that will help to ensure that at least there is a strong rule of law in the civil service, and especially that we are encouraging accountability, because accountability is key. And that actually can be done, really. We can force that. We can force, because there is no destiny. We are not damned people. The second thing we can do is really, I would say, promoting transparency and accountability. I just spoke about accountability. And that actually can be done through fighting corruption, because corruption is one of the top driver of bad governance in Africa. And that actually can be tackled in one way or another by establishing anti-corruption agencies, but also using the internet, like we are doing in so many places, so many countries. Actually, whenever an issue of corruption actually come to our attention, we start publishing this, advertising this, talking about it, and somehow I think it's helping. People now are more and more less keen to openly steal. They are a little bit worried. At least it wasn't the case few years ago. You have as well education. I think we can continue investing in education, promoting good governance in our countries. Need really, I would say, quality education to ensure that citizens are well informed about our rights and our responsibilities, and that we are really able to hold our governments accountable, and that actually would become possible only if we push for equality education. And of course, finally, least but not last, I think that it's very important for us to encourage civil participation in the governance process. Today, we are doing it in the internet. This program that you are holding, I think, is part of this journey. It's very important, but you have to go beyond that. It shouldn't be just an association of a few. Actually, few, like we say, so those who know. It should actually go beyond those who know. It should be general. I say it should become something cultural for us. And that one, we can do it by creating space for citizens in decision making, and by ensuring that our civil society in our countries, our civil society organization actually would be capacitated to represent the interest of our citizens. So overall, I would say the problem of bad governance in our continent is quite complex, but it's also multifaceted. It's multidimensional, but it's not something which is unsurmountable. I think with the right, I would say, policies at the one side, and also investments, especially from the youth, from the women, from the diaspora, and from the civil society itself, we can actually overcome the challenge of bad governance and start really the process of building strong, accountable, and I would say, strong, accountable public institutions that would serve the interest of our citizens. That's what I can actually share with you. Thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amin Idris. We appreciate your contribution and your perspective from Chad. Thank you. I think we have to go to Mr. Ching Ono again, the journalist from Zimbabwe, to look at the perspective of how do you cope with the enormous repression of the new regime, and what do you think could be the dynamics of the approaching elections in August in Zimbabwe, looking at the relationship between the current government and people of your domain who are journalists? What can you say to that?
Thank you very much, Fabrice. Personally, I've been able to use social media. In the past, we were not able to respond to the lies, to the crude propaganda that has been put out by the state or the ruling party. But these days, we are able to use Twitter like we're doing right now, and having conversations and communicating with citizens amongst ourselves. We use Twitter, we use Instagram, we use Facebook, and sometimes we use TikTok as well to try and reach to young people so that they understand the importance of an anti-corrupt environment. In terms of coping with the regime, what it has done is instill the fear of God in not only the citizens but in the opposition leadership. They are now afraid to move, to do anything, even things that are constitutional. So, for instance, in Zimbabwe, the constitution allows you to demonstrate and petition your government. But the opposition is now so terrified of doing that because each time they try and do that, they are thrown into prison. So the regime has managed to stop people from doing what is allowed by the constitution to do. But for someone like myself, I'm not a politician. I'm not running for office. So I just operate as a journalist. But again, as a journalist, sometimes you face the kind of intimidation that ordinarily shouldn't be happening. So the biggest problem that we have as journalists is that there is no cohesive solidarity amongst ourselves locally and internationally. So when I was arrested in 2020, you'd find that it was mostly the South African media that was reporting about my incarceration on a day-to-day basis, speaking to my lawyers on television. But there's a reason to that. Zimbabwe is the only country of significance that has only one TV station on the African continent. We were the first country to have television in 1962 together with Nigeria in sub-Saharan Africa. But today we have only one TV station. Nigeria has got hundreds of TV stations. So the regime has managed to close the media space so that people cannot communicate or get information from various political actors or civil society. The biggest source of news in Zimbabwe is radio, and all the radio stations, without exception, are controlled by the state or the ruling party. The only other radio station which calls itself independent is actually owned by a ZANU-PF member of parliament. So there's no free radio in Zimbabwe. And because of that, people are bombarded day and night with propaganda, and alternative voices are not given space. So, for instance, I mentioned in my earlier submission the biggest reggae artist in Zimbabwe called Wingy D. He had a massive album launch in December, and his songs have never been played on all radio stations. And that is self-evident to lack of independence on these radio stations. So coming back to the continent, I think what we need is solidarity. It's for you guys to share our stories, to talk about our pain so that people can understand on the continent what's happening in Zimbabwe. You mentioned in the last part of your question the election. The election is going to be a charade because there is no access to information for the ordinary citizens, especially those that live in rural areas. The only way they can get information is through WhatsApp. They're not able to use Twitter. The young ones try to use Facebook, but because of economic reasons, they're not able to buy data. And when they buy data, the network connections are terrible. So it's difficult to give information to these people. And as I said, they rely only on radio, which is the biggest source of news in Zimbabwe. For someone like myself, I've got an international profile, but it doesn't help when a guy who is 22 years old, a budding journalist, a guy who's just come out of university, when they are arrested, nobody gets to know that they've been arrested. There are a lot of people that get arrested all the time, but because they don't have the kind of profile like I do, you never get to hear about them. And I think it's also a challenge for us as Zimbabwean journalists, especially the ones that write for local media, to continuously amplify and work with other journalists on the continent to try and get these stories out there so that at least there's a light that is shining in the dark corners of what's happening in Zimbabwe. And especially as we head towards the next election. We know that if the election is rigged, which ZANU-PF always does, the African Union is going to be of no use to us. SADC is not going to be of no use to us. These are like old people's homes where they endorse each other's rigged elections. The African Union endorsed the election in Nigeria. We all saw what happened in Nigeria. So in terms of institutional framework, which is hinging on government, like African Union, like SADC, we do not have a chance at all. And our only chance is for you guys as citizens of the continent to talk about what's happening It's a struggle. It's not an event. It will take time, but we need to keep pushing and not to give up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chingono. We appreciate your contribution. From your perspective, I think that everyone have the right to his or her opinion based on the personal experience of the environment and information you get about other countries too. But like I stated from the onset of this space, here everyone knows something, no one knows everything, and we will be hearing from a cross-section of experts in leadership, in politics, journalism, human rights throughout the continent. So right now, we will be hearing from our expert from Nigeria. He is Mr. Abdul Oro. Mr. Abdul Oro is a journalist, a lawyer, a politician, and administrator from from Iga, Owan East, Edo State of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So he's respondent with Guardian newspaper, South correspondent, This Week magazine, and a couple of other newspapers in Nigeria. Member of Civil Liberties Organization, elected member of House of Representatives of Owan East Federal Constituency, and he has quite a rich profile, which I will not want to go on to read everything, but I will go straight to give the mic to him. He will give us the perspective of effect of bad governance and also the perspective of Nigeria in the just ended presidential or general elections in Nigeria. So, Honorable Abdul Orok, you're welcome. You have the mic.
Thank you very much, Fabrice, and it's my thank you very much, Fabrice, and let me appreciate everybody who have appeared on this program tonight. I've listened patiently to some of them. I couldn't hear others, but I could identify with some of the issues that have been raised. And I want to also add that I am Nalowa's lawyer in Nigeria. I was the one got out of detention. I also I was listening patiently to Hopewell. Yeah, okay. So I was trying to say I was listening to Hopewell from Zimbabwe. And can you hear me? Shh. Okay. Yeah. And you listen, I'm pained by the fact that I know Chinamaka. Over time, I met him I met him once in Europe, and he was supposed to be somebody who believes in democracy. Patrick. In Europe. Well, it's painful to see that people who were fighting for democracy, for liberation, and all that are now those who are persecuting their own citizens. Anyway, now let me talk about the elections in Nigeria. I started out as a journalist, and I have been a human rights activist. And I participated in this election, and this is our 7th election since democracy was restored in 1999. And we thought that by this election, we'll be moving from democratic consolidation, democratic transition to consolidation. Transition to democratic consolidation. But unfortunately, the election has turned out to be very controversial. But my personal experience, and I must confess here that I'm from the ruling party. We have the All People's Congress and All Progressive Congress. The All Progressive Congress. And I am trying to speak from what I have observed. And I can tell you a bit about what others are saying about the election. In my constituency where I voted, the people queued up, peacefully. People queued up peacefully, and or especially the elderly people were allowed to queue up first, and every other person queued up peacefully. The INEC, the officials that organized the election, came out early enough. They came there. They came around 8 in the morning, and by 8:30 they started accreditation. They took your photograph. You did thumb printing, and then you were, if you're identified, and then you were given a ballot paper. You were given 3 ballot papers: one for the presidency, one for the Senate, and one for the House of Representatives. Three ballot papers: one for the president, the Senate, and then the House of Representatives. So during the course of the and then the voting continued until about 2 o'clock. The voting continued until about 2 o'clock, and then the counting started and ended about 6 o'clock. It was very peaceful. There was only one security man, a traffic warden, who was present. There was no disturbance of any nature. And then when one of the computers, the battery ran out, I personally gave my power bank to the guy, and he plugged it, and they were able to conclude the process. There was no any disturbance. So at the end of the election, the voting, at the end of the vote, all the agents signed the form, the results, and they were taken to a collation center. And that is what happened in my constituency. Where they were eventually taken to transmitted to Abuja. Let me say that the way the election came out generally, where before now we have received so many complaints or so many opinion polls generated from abroad, predicting, and of course the prophets, the religious leaders, we are also already predicting those who will win and those who will not win. But from what has happened, it is clear that there was nothing different from what I've observed in the past. The voting pattern was the same. The number of people who voted were not significantly different in the past. Were not significantly different from those who voted now. Significantly different for those who voted now. And when the results were announced, they were not substantially different. But the only difference now is that there was no the ruling party was there was no there was no incumbent. There was no incumbent president. There was no incumbent president. The major parties that were participating were all I don't know if you are still hearing me because my phone is just showing all kinds of things. They were all new fresh candidates. So there were four major candidates that appeared to have scored significant votes. The president, the candidate of the ruling party, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, lost by about 7,000 votes. Lost about 7,000 votes in his home region of Lagos. Lost about 7,000 votes in his state, Lagos State, where he was governor for 8 years from 1999 to 2007. Then the president's home state, Katsina, and the president's home state, Katsina, he also lost in that state, and also lost in Kebbi State, where the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum comes from, and then also in Plateau State, where the Director General of the campaign comes from, and then in Kano State, which he expected to win. The Director General of the campaign comes from, who was also a senatorial candidate. And then the chairman of the ruling party also lost in his state of Nasarawa State. So these are some of the new things we saw during the election. But at the end of the day, by the time but this candidate also won in areas that were that he wasn't expected to win. For instance, in Benue State, which is predominantly Christian, and the governor was actively campaigning against him, he won.
Hon Abdul, your line have been breaking. It's not been easy to get you fluently. The network today is quite terrible with most of the speakers. So
yes, I thought I should explain the background.
Yes, you can try to wrap up so that we go to Mr. Michael.
Anyway, let me try to wrap up. At the end of the day, four major candidates were noticed. The candidate of the ruling party scored about 8 million votes. And then the other two candidates scored a little above 6 million votes. And then one scored 1 million votes. 24 million votes were recorded. And then, which is like... and at the end of the day, the candidate of the ruling party, Ahmed Bola Tinubu, was declared the winner of the election because he scored above 25% in about 30 states out of the 32 states. And then the other
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
I can hear you, certainly, madam. I think the honorable has dropped.
Okay. Fabrice, are you there? Fabrice?
Yes. I think Honorable. Okay. Thank you so much. We want to appreciate your contribution. Today, it's really challenging. It seems there is a network issue across the continent because we're getting the same feedback from DR Congo. Our guests from there could not connect because of network challenges. Even here in Cameroon, I'm also having serious network challenges, and that seems to be the case with a host of other speakers. So, if Mr. Michael is ready, we would like to get from your own perspective what you think about effects of bad governance. You will introduce yourself and tell us the country you're spacing from and your area of expertise, and then make your contribution brief and straight to the point. Precision and concision is very important here. And s'il y a les gens qui aimeraient peut-être les résumés de ce qu'on discute en français, il faut indiquer. Il y a quelques partages, dashboard, quelques partages, les idées partagées par M. Idriss du chat, moi-même et Naloa. Vous pouvez regarder s'il y a les idées que vous partagez. Vous pouvez aussi partager les tweets. So you can check the dashboard for the listeners and then check some of the ideas shared there. You could always share them or give your opinion about it. That's part of the solidarity, and that's part of what we're talking about. For us in Cameroon, we've been having a serious problem of bad governance for the past 60 years, because Cameroonians have never sat as a country to define their nationhood. Everything has just been forcefully put together. People with different background, different perspective, different conception of power, or conception of authority, way of life, jumbled up in a country to live together, and with different colonial heritage and so on. So that made us to have the first founding president who ruled the country with a grip of power from the independence 60, reunification 61, right to 72, and a very tough moment for Cameroon with an arranged constitutional heir in 1982 with the incumbent president Paul Biya. Since then till now, in 2023, he's still president for the past 41 years, and he has dragged the country to insecurity, to inflation, to crisis, to war with the English-speaking regions where I come from, and where a couple of other people come from in the country, with attempts to break away from Cameroon to form the Republic of Southern Cameroon, or Ambazonia, what other people called it. So this has been the challenges in Cameroon, coupled with the security challenges in the extreme north of the region with Boko Haram that is affecting Nigeria, Cameroon, and Chad in the Lake Chad Basin area, and insurgencies in the east region of the country with rebel groups from Central African Republic from time to time, having casualties in the Bumbangoko division, which is just neighbor to Central Africa and Bangui. So these challenges come to tell us the failure of a state without nationhood, a state without integrity, without honor, without esteem, without values defined, without a vision, without transformation. So it's just a state forcefully created without taking into consideration all the aspects of a long-term sustainable country that will reflect the aspiration of its people. And for all this time, the only thing that the party in power in Cameroon, which is the CBDM political party, knows, it's absolute conservation of power ad infinitum, infinitely, indefinitely. They don't care whether this conservation of power is at the detriment of the people they are managing, whether it's at the detriment of the international community, whether it's at the detriment of the continent, they don't care. They just want to remain in power, irrespective of what it costs. And that's why, if you are familiar with Cameroon and with Yaoundé, the political capital, or Douala, the economic capital, you will discover that the country is blessed with a lot of human and material resources, but this just goes to the pocket of some individuals who are into the executive arm of the government. But generally, the infrastructure are really very poor, with little or no modern or ultra-modern routes, and other means of transport have not been developed. It's just a sham and a shame of a country that is blessed with a lot of resources, with just approximately between 27 to 30 million people, inhabitants. So we young politicians or network of young leaders in Cameroon are creating a network and platform of young Cameroonians to advocate for the resignation of the president and for political transition and for the holding of credible elections, because the country has never in his history voted a president since the birth of the country Cameroon. It has never voted a president to power. It's just been renewal, renewal, and renewal, and rigging. So we've just known two presidents from independence in 1960 to present. So we are pressuring, we are advocating, and we are acting on the ground to see that these things change. And we are learning through a lot of lessons from our neighbor Nigeria, from Chad, and the Semak zone with the challenges they face there, and with the particularity of Cameroon. I just thought I should share the Cameroon experience with you. But if anyone would want to know anything specifically about the Cameroon situation, you just let me know, and then I could give you more elaboration to that. Mr. Michael, you have the mic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the blessing actually to give me the mic on this platform. I'm not a man of great importance, but I'm a child and the son of the soil from Africa. I grew up in Africa, traveled and lived in the United Kingdom. I served a full military career within the British forces and got out with retirement. During that time, what is it that I've learned? Through my journeys to places of war and places of interest, through the British and the world, actually, foreign policies and Africa itself. What is the poverty? What is good governance? What is the measure of good governance when it comes to the African standpoint? How are you judging good governance? Where have you seen this good governance? It is a very important question that I've always asked myself as an African child, even growing, through the military ranks and understanding the policies of the Western world. So coming to Africa itself, not particularly looking at the country that I come from, because I was born in Zimbabwe, but just looking at Africa from a geopolitics side, my question would be, what is it of our understanding of good governance? Within your political space or your country space do you measure good governance? Where have you seen it? How have you tested good governance that is brought by you, by your own people? It's a question that African countries need to actually look at and actually sanitize when it comes to bad governance. Where do we form our doctrine? Within your own country or as a continent or maybe as a sub-region to where you are formulated? How is this governance formulated? What policies, procedures, laws that are supporting the effects or to sanitize or create this governance that we are seeking in the areas of interest in where we are? That's the biggest question to me. When it comes to Africa as a whole, not looking just at my country, Zimbabwe, but looking at Africa as a whole from this topic itself, effects of bad governance. We know effects of bad governance arise when people do not know what poverties they have. What are the poverties that your people have actually set down as a people, come up and describe as your poverties? What sort of governance or government do you have within your own spaces where you are? You see, because one might say, oh, maybe there's dictatorship there. But do we say dictatorship doesn't work, or has it worked somewhere else? Or are we saying a social democracy, or perhaps maybe it just depends with how you formulate your government and how you have resourced that government. We have the Saudi Arabias, we have the Omanis, we have many countries of a different where we have kingdomship. Even the United Kingdom itself, as many witness with the death of the Queen, that it is actually an ultimate monarch land. It is by the king. Now they live and actually do that because he has the power to to choose a government or to reject a prime minister and so forth. So when it comes to governance and policies, what measures are we looking at? Are we just looking at the lowest level, or are we going to the highest office of a president? This is the question that I think as African young people, as we seek to build a nature, the governance that we are seeking, the accountability we have to be asking ourselves, the roles and responsibilities of those that we vote into power. We have many African countries, I think they have parliaments. Who are we putting in those parliaments? Despite the one that has got power, the opposition side, who are you resourcing to put into this to hold those in government to account? The institutions as they are being run, who is there? Who are the people that are running your hospitals, your police service, innovation wise, and so forth? How do we understand innovation in terms of governance? How do we also understand? Many apologies. My daughter has just come to me. Sorry. How do we also come to this position of actually saying to ourselves, this is the measure of what we are doing, and this is the output we are actually happening, we are actually coming to get into play. So to me, it's a very important topic, but for me it is understanding of our poverties that is going to get us the governance we are seeking. Because if we understand the poverties that we have, then we are going to derive our doctrine, then our policies from that standpoint. If you look at the United Nations, the African Union at the moment, it is resourced and funded by foreign people. Who fund this institution do not have Africa at heart. And so does that machine give us the policies we are seeking as a people? You look at SADC itself, look at the middle region of Africa. Who is in this space? During my travels, I came to understand there's about 26, 27 bases, American bases within the African space. Some of these bases I've traveled myself to witness what is going there as a military person. But why are these people there? Africa itself cannot actually govern itself. We cannot protect our lands. We cannot protect our soils. We can't feed ourselves. We are the youngest of all and the biggest of all. But we can't afford to feed ourselves as a people, as nations. So for me, the interesting point, I understand the soreness of the innate position which you are feeling because you are there and you can feel the hot air of the leaders who are governing you today. But the bigger question should be for the youth, and those that are interested in politics, to really ask themselves to say, who are our architects of the systems that we're serving today? If your hand as an African people is not part of those systems, they are not yours. So you can't understand and seek governance from policies that are driven from somewhere else and borrowed by you. You have to be able to understand that this level to this level. When a soldier serves in the British nation, as you go through the ranks, you are taught on how to protect the institution. So you have to understand governance at the highest level, because the interest of that nation has to be upheld. You are the protector and the defender of that. So perhaps maybe from an African standpoint, we have to ask ourselves by the questions that we've been brought here, not dismissing people's pains, but asking the African child, what is your poverty? What are the poverties of our people? Is it power? Is it finance? Or are we seeking fairer systems that give lives for the next generation and protect Africa for the next generation? That's my contribution for now. Because if we come up to the question, effective effects of bad governance, and we do not know what that good governance is, and to whose standard and key point you're actually taking that governance point, we will be misleading ourselves, and the revolutions and the wars and the pains will continue before we find the true prescription to the topic. Many thanks. Nalo, I'm finished. Fabric, are you there? Fabrice?
Thank you very much, Michael. And we really do appreciate everything you have told us today. And I hope that we take that home and reflect on it. Like we said, it's not going to be a change in 1 day or 2 days. It's going to be a long walk. But the important thing is that we all have to be prepared for this work. It's not going to be an easy ride. I can testify to that. Some of us have been in and out of trying to change our countries for some time now, and it hasn't been easy. So as we continue to look for possible solutions, we should all bear in mind that this is not going to be something that we are going to do in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. It's going to be a gradual process. The whole of Africa has a problem. Doesn't matter where you come from. And to fix that, we need to be strategic. We need to be patient. Patience is very important. If we try to rush things, we just end up spoiling it. But I'm sure that with all the experts we have here, politicians, economists, lawyers, and all that, I think someday we'll be able to draw a good map to have a better Africa, an Africa that will be acceptable to all of us. So Bernard Mona, I think he is on. He had some network issues. So Bernard Mona is a politician, now a young one from Ghana, and he would like to talk to us about bad governance in Ghana. Bernard, so if you are listening to me, can you introduce yourself?
Good evening to everyone. It depends on where you are. It is good evening or good afternoon or good morning. But once I'm in Ghana, I'm allowed to say good evening. My name is Bernard Ambataila Mona. I'm from Ghana, a political activist, an African in all its facets, a Pan-African in my thinking, in what I wear, in what I eat, and in how I talk. I don't know what else is required of me in terms of introduction, but certainly I joined this discussion because I believe that the continent of Africa can be better if the right leadership is put in place. If we get the right leadership in Ghana, it will have its effect on Nigeria. And if we have the right leadership in Nigeria, it will have its effect in Cameroon. Above all, we must have right-thinking leaders who must know that the sub-regional groupings are not the solution to the African problems. African problems must be tackled as African problems and not broken down into regional blocks. The economic community of West African states has no route to leading to the total emancipation of Africa. And so is the East African bloc, is the Southern African bloc, and the Central African bloc. It appears that these are institutions that are artificialized by the Western and Asian countries to be able to continue to perpetuate us and to deny us of our right of place. Colonialism has changed its form, and we need to also change our tactics. The colonialists are no more physically present in Africa to take over territories, but they have taken over the territories of Africa in the form of economies, and they come here as investors. They impoverish us, they indebt us, and at the end of the day, we even become worse than colonies, we become slaves. So the right-thinking leaders will be able to do what is prudent for us. I think that this will suffice as an introduction, and if I'm asked to deliver on any issue, I will.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bernard. I think that's insightful. We're looking at the effects of bad governance in Africa, and you're from Ghana, you're an activist, and you follow up the train of activities. There is always this argument whether Ghana is the model of West African sub-region democracy, given that there is constitutional limit to presidential office mandate, and there is rotation of this from after every 8 years. How do you analyze this? How do you explain this? Maybe some of us who are in countries where we have indefinite renewal of presidential mandate admire Ghana and say, hey, perhaps you guys are advancing. Do you think your condition is better than that of other countries? Do you think the standard of living is better? Do you think that the effects of bad governance is the same? How can you put it in your own words and thoughts?
Well, thank you very much. If good governance is about elections and the ability of a nation to change from one political party to the other, then certainly Ghana is a country where good governance has pervaded since 1992. So for nearly 31 years, Ghana can claim that we have stabilized our environment politically and, if you want, constitutionally. But behind the constitutional stability is the facade of extortion and ugly leadership that we face all the time. Those of you who are aware that Ghana is said to be the beacon of democracy, and there are many tenets of democracy. That includes freedom of speech. You should be able to express your views without hindrance. But in our nation, you may know that journalists have come under severe attacks for wanting to expose the rot, particularly among the executive and the judiciary. And therefore, we have had instances in the not distant past where journalists have been targeted and shot because they did some investigative journalism that exposed the presidency, the vice presidency, and some ministers as very corrupt and willing to auction the nation Ghana for the highest interest. So Ahmed Swale, who is a journalist in this event, was killed, and I'm sure many of you can just Google. And this was inspired by a politician who said that he knows him, and that anyone who finds him, they can beat him, they can kill him, and that he will go to their defense. The man has died for the past 4 years, and nothing has happened. And so within the media space, you can say that democracy is stifled, because if you are not careful and you speak your mind and expose the rot within the society, you and your family will be at risk. Civic space is shrinking because government officials take the delight to attack any civil society organization that comes out exposing the other side of governance and posting the difficulties that confront us. Certainly, Ghana has been able, probably because in the continent of Africa, we can claim that we have had the highest number of military takeovers from 1966. Maybe we are the first to start it, but we were also the last probably to end it in 1981 when the last military officer took place, Jerry John Rawlings. And in 1992, returned to constitutional democracy. And since then, there has been a change of one political party to another political party. In fact, two political parties have come to entrench themselves, the National Democratic Congress and the New Patriotic Party. The New Patriotic Party currently has the presidency and of course have the governance. But things have not been easy. As a civil society activist, a political activist, I have on many occasions been arrested, I have been tortured, I have been detained for mobilizing just to protest against government policies that are obnoxious. So if within a democracy, you conform with the laws, and yet you can be arrested because the president feels that your actions are inimical to the promotion of his political agenda, then you are attacked. That certainly does not qualify for good governance. This is very terrible governance that we are finding. But of course, if you just oppose Ghana's situation with our neighbors, then you can come and say that Ghana, we have Uhuru when it comes to a democratic tendency, because just nearby is Togo. And we have what I call a dynastic rule by the Nasingbe family, that his father served about 38 years in office and handed or died in office, and by some tactics, before Nasingbe became president, ECOWAS compelled an election to ensure that they passed through democratic tendencies. And he has been in office for the past 18 years. And after that, it is now that they say that they are going to do term limits, and he is qualified to stand for the first term and to go for another term. Certainly, that cannot qualify as democracy. Now, if you move from Ghana, from Togo, and you go to Burkina Faso, the experiment that we saw with Mark Kabore was also truncated with military leaders taking over. And of course, going further north, you go and find Mali, and you realize that the situation is not healthy. The recent Nigerian elections, if there is anything to go by, it just enforces the fact that in most of our African countries, there is no election, but there is election. And certainly, in the midst of all these inaccuracies of, or what I call, in the midst of this ugly governance, Ghana will be seen as the oasis of good governance. But in actual fact, when you come to Ghana, you realize that, hey, you have a president who appoints his brother as Minister for Finance, appoints another one as the secretary, executive secretary to cabinet, appoints another one as Minister for Roads, appoints another one as minister responsible for, so it is like one family who are heading. And when the Minister for Finance is running the economy aground, and you tell the president, your Minister for Finance is running the economy aground, and all of you know the economic crisis Ghana is facing, he turns around to say that the minister is the most excellently performing minister. And everything is done to support this minister because he's using the public resources for the betterment of family, the family. And it's because, for instance, our Minister for Finance, who has a company called Enterprise Insurance, can say that during COVID-19, Enterprise Insurance will get about $5 million to insure people, and no single insurance certificate is issued. And yet, the money has not been requested to be returned to the state. You have a Minister for Finance who has a bank, and anytime the government of Ghana is borrowing from external sources, the Minister for Finance's bank becomes a transactions advisor and takes a certain percentage of whatever we borrow. So anytime Ghana is getting poorer and is getting indebted, you have the president and his family getting richer and richer by the deals that they are cutting. And so if democracy is just about elections, I assure you that Ghana is doing well. But if it is about the other tenants to ensure that, look, we have media space, we have civil activities taking place, we have economic governance taking place, Ghana is a bad example.
Thank you so much.
Am I still on?
I think. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
And so obviously, I appreciate when people say Ghana is the oasis of peace. There's no doubt about it. And I have traveled in many African countries. I feel sad when I see how brutal our regimes can be. But sometimes when you compare that to the economic brutalities that is meted out on other countries, where there is seemingly political transitions, it doesn't augur well that a country like Ghana will continue to have the kind of leadership we have. But elections by themselves do not bring out the best in leadership. And that is why you can have octogenarians occupying political parties. And at the end of the day winning or being selected. The heads of security agencies or promotion to higher levels in security agencies are at the behest of the president. You can be assured that democracy is conscripted into the hands of the executive and, for that matter, the president. And then they turn democracy as if it is their husband or their wife on bed. Hello.
We can hear you, actually.
Yeah.
And so so let me finally say that it is good to look at Ghana as an example, only in terms of the rotation or the changing in electoral processes. But good governance, in my view, goes beyond changing of elections or changing of the figures involved. It involves the stability of citizens to have their right to speak their mind without being harassed, without getting missing and their families cannot trace them. It involves the fact that there must be economic accountability. It involves the fact that citizens must have their right to stick in any position that they want. It involves civil society organization to be able to speak their mind. And to that extent, Ghana cannot qualify fully as the democratic example for the African state. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bernard. That was insightful. We want to acknowledge all Ghanaians listening. We want to acknowledge all Cameroonians listening, all Nigerians, Chadiens. Bienvenue, soyez la bienvenue. Si vous n'écoutez pas bien l'anglais, vous pouvez demander un petit résumé des choses qu'on discute ici, parce qu'on veut vraiment que le message passe à tout le monde. Les Congolais, bienvenue dans le space. On veut dire merci pour votre patience et pertinence. Monsieur Kabambi, il y a toujours difficulté de se connecter, mais ici il y a les autres qui pouvaient venir s'exprimer au nom des DRC, c'est bien, parce que l'objectif d'aujourd'hui c'était pour toucher le Nigeria, RDC, Zimbabwe, le Cameroun, le Tchad, voilà, parce que chaque space a un focus. C'est pour cela qu'on a eu les experts dans tous ces pays. Meanwhile, people from other countries who are with us from North, Central, East, West, South, we acknowledge your presence here. On the dashboard, following the link of the conversation here, you can make suggestions of topics and focus for next space, because this space is a monthly space, the 5th of every month, most especially on Sundays. We always have these conversations, and we don't just want to have the conversations, but we also want to get connected to one another. I want to appreciate my brother Noah Nash. He is from Ghana. We also got connected on Twitter. We have a lot of insightful exchanges, and that's the importance of this kind of space. So if anyone incites you from their presentation, the way they articulate, you think their profile could be of help, yeah, you could follow them, check their profile, why not inbox them, and then that's how we build the solidarity and support across the continent. Easy to also understand the continent when traveling around. And to say that the listeners can also speak. You can request the mic, and then you come up and give your own remarks, suggestion, and questions on the topic, effects of bad governance, and way forward on how to deal with these consequences. Monsieur Amin Idriss, votre main a été levée depuis. Je veux vous passer la parole juste avant Monsieur Bachona. Why, Mr. Amin Idriss, you have the floor.
Thank you, Fabrice. Actually, I wanted to take the floor to provide additional remarks about democracy, because I was hearing to previous speakers, actually, some of them were wondering whether or not democracy is something that we need in Africa. I don't want to go into academic definition. I just want to put forward 10 characteristics of what could be called democracy. You can actually give whatever name you want to it, but this is exactly what makes a society work. Number one is the freedom of speech, expression, and the freedom actually to assemble. And number two is, I would say, religious and political freedom. The third characteristic is an independent, impartial, and fair justice system and justice. Number four, it's about a constitution that actually defines the limits and the rights of the political powers, but also of the citizens. Number five, it's a system of equitable representation and equitable access to participation in the political process, the political decision making. And number six, we are talking about effective and responsible mechanism actually for access to information and channels of access for citizens to information related to political decision making, to political processes in their country. Number seven is civil society, I would say, and a civil society professional mediation actually that offers the governed a space to express themselves, but also to get involved, you know. And number eight, it's about accountability of government officials, but also maximum transparency in public processes and especially public expenditures, but also public decision making. Number eight, it's about, at the end of the day, it's about a fair and equitable economic system that gives to every citizen an equal opportunity to participate in the economy, in the political processes, and to have a fair and decent life. And finally, and I know that this is actually where usually in Africa people tend to disagree, it's about fair and free elections that allow each citizen to express themselves through the vote. But you can replace the election by whatever mechanism that allow you to choose your representatives. So those 10 elements are what we call democracy. It's not necessarily about multipartyism. It's really about good governance. It's about strong governance. It's about strong institutions that work and that at the end of the day allow each and every citizen to have an equitable access to public goods, you know, and every citizen to have an equal opportunity to public goods, but also to equal opportunity to participate in the political process and also in the economic process. But of course, we know, and I have posted actually a thread on my profile that actually I just speak on this space. It is in French. It's really about as well what are the deviations of, I would say, democracy in Africa, and that actually could lead to bad governance. The first one is the political tribalism. I won't actually really talk much about it, I'll just actually put it there. Second one is about the lobbying, especially the political lobbying in our countries. And the third one is about the corruption as well. And finally, the contradictory interest of the political actors, but also the citizens. So yes, democracy in Africa actually have some limits. Although many African countries, I think we have made some considerable progress. We should not actually just look with disdain to the progress that we have made, because the progress are not actually, I would say, the work of the political leaders. Progress that we have made are the consequences, the results of all the work that we, civil society, actually are doing. So we should recognize that, acknowledge that, and be proud of that, but then recognize at the same time that there is still a long way to go first to educate people about civic culture, about law awareness, but also to a long way to go to fight against bad governance and corruption, a long way to go actually about bringing an equitable economic and social system, but a long way, a long journey again that we have in front of us, to make sure that we remove political restrictions. So if we can actually do that, and this is really the way to go, I think in the next few years we can sit again and say, well, we are still not there. Let's not call it democracy if you want, but this is the kind of society that carries the 10 characteristics that I just outlined, which are really about freedom of speech, expression, religious freedom, independent and impartial and fair justice, and all these things put together. At least we can have countries that can wait, in the international arena. And this is what is important. And finally, and this is just a final remark, I've heard some of the speakers saying that the African Union is financed actually by foreigners. I think that this is quite common. We hear a lot about that. At least I hear a lot about that, but it is not factual. The fact is that the African Union budget have 3 levels. The first one is what they call operational budget. Their operational budget is 100% funded by the member states themselves through their contribution, which is organized via what they call a scale of assessment. And this is how actually they contribute to the functioning of their organization. It means that all the staff of these organizations and the administration, the functioning is actually 100% paid for by the member states themselves. Second level is what they call the program budget. Especially African Union have so many programs that they define themselves, programs that member states bring as well on the table. And those programs used to be financed almost 95% by European Union, Americans, Japanese, Chinese, whoever, just you name them, right? But in 2017, head of states made decision that at least 75% of their programs going forward must be financed by themselves. Thus, they have established a mechanism. And so far, I think right now they are at 60-40, meaning that 60% financed still by foreign powers and 40%. But that means that they have reduced as well the scale of their programs on infrastructure, program on trade, program on health. But those are continental programs, actually. It's all about, I would say, building awareness and cultivating awareness, but building capacity of the countries to be able to define and implement programs themselves in those areas. And thirdly, and which this is actually very important, is the budget for peace and security. Of course, somebody was saying that Africa cannot even fund its own security. This is, again, not true. It's not factual. Why? If you look at the budget of peace and security, member states of the African Union have decided that 25% should be financed by them. Thus, they have created the peace fund, right? But then they have this philosophy to say that most of the conflicts and insecurities in Africa are being created actually by foreign powers. Therefore, they must actually take responsibility and contribute to the financing, at least in terms of financial means. However, African countries are the ones who are providing troops. But when you provide troops and those people are killed, I think this is priceless. We can't even put the financial weight, in front of that. I remember 2016, 2017, there were about 180 people who were killed in fighting the Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Those people, those soldiers come from Kenya, they come from Burundi, they come from Uganda, they come from Ethiopia, all of them. And 180 were killed. But nobody actually just want to recognize that this is beyond contribution. This is not just financial contribution. When the French lost 52 or 54 people, actually 54 soldiers in Mali, they keep actually reminding that to us all the time. that this is their contribution. But for us, when we fight for our brothers and sisters to maintain their security, we don't want to recognize that. And we keep always saying that we disdain, we just actually don't want to recognize that we are contributing to our own security. We want to say always that, oh, this is not us. It's always paid for by foreigners. Yes, they bring financial means, but we are the ones actually who go on the ground. Our soldiers, they are the ones fighting, the terrorists. Now, finally, and this is important, yes, some people actually are completely right when they say that we have this issue of conflict between countries, but this is another subject. For that one, you must as well acknowledge that the African Union is an intergovernmental organization. It's powerless because powers is being detained and kept by the head of states and governments. So they are the ones actually who make decisions. It's not the union. The union is just a secretariat. The commission is just a secretariat, and it's not actually their job to make decisions. They make sure that studies are there, analyses are there, data are there, and they bring that before the head of states and government, actually, who would decide. And each and every country usually make a decision based on its sole and sovereign interest. So it's not about the interest of the continent. Usually it's first about their interest, their own national security. And on that one, there is still a lot of work that actually need to be carried forward. Thank you very much. Noale, I finished. Thank you. Naroa, sorry.
All right, thank you very much, Amin. That was very insightful. Just a moment, please. Okay, I guess Fabrice is struggling to join in again. The network hasn't been friendly to many of us today. So our next speaker is going to be Bashona. Bashona, you can unmute yourself and give us a brief introduction if you are there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm from Zimbabwe. Yes, and I've seen your topic. It's an interesting one, but I don't know the effects of bad governance. Is it on the corporate level, at governmental level, or on a multinational, groupings? But maybe I'll just try to bring it all together so that I will not lost from what other speakers have actually, spoken about. So my small presentation will start with us as Africans. The Africans that we have today, we are living in a borrowed governance, which never been us, and it's something which was enforced in us as Africans. The living that we are living right now in Africa, I would pose a question to each and everyone who is on this platform. Show me one country which is in Africa that practice the so-called democracy which came from the Western world of elections, and that country is prospering today. If you come to Southern Africa today, you realize that Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia, at some point it was one country because of colonization, and that was the Sorry, I think somebody muted me by mistake. I was saying that if you come to Southern Africa today, you realize that Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Zambia was once a one country. And during that time, my sister, that was the only time we saw the growth or economic growth. Thereafter, there was nothing. Why am I giving you these examples? I want you to understand that the current system that we are using across Africa and part of Middle East is not ours. It's a system which was created by the Western world and by white monopoly to make sure that they will continue to take our resources through elections. We will continue focusing on elections 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, every day that I'm going to think who is going to be the next leader of my country, who is going to be the next MP or councillor in my community. But at the end of the day, what are we building? What do we have? That's the problem of African child today. Therefore, you then realize that the people that are going to be in the leadership position across these levels of leadership, some of them, they don't even know what corporate governance is. They don't even know what governance is. They're not even anywhere close to a position where they're going to articulate what corporate governance is. Therefore, we found one thing as Africans. Are they going to articulate the issues of poverty? Are they going to articulate the issues of threats that might come through their leadership? So this is the simplest thing that the African child is facing today. So what will be the solution to this problem? We need to go back to reset pattern. We need to get rid with this so-called democracy, which the Western world brought to us. Look what happened 2 days, 3 days ago in DRC. Macron flew all the way from France to come and dictate what is supposed to be happening in DRC. It's because we are still using their system. And I'm glad, and I want to thank the president of DRC, President Tshisekedi, for showing him that he is an African leader. You see, in Africa, we need people who understand what leadership is all about, not puppet people who can be told to what to do by the Western world. Right now, we have got so many leaders. I'll give you an example. We've got DRC and Zambia. They flew all the way from Africa to America to sign a deal in front of Secretary of State, who is merely a Minister of Foreign Affairs, but they would sign a deal in front of him. What does that speak to an African child? To surrender the mining rights to a Western country, to a superpower, instead of coming up with our own GOM solution. So the point is, where is governance? Are these people for us or not for us? My brother from Ghana was talking about what is happening in Ghana today. If you go to Zimbabwe, if you go to South Africa, if you go to Malawi, if you go to DRC, you find the same problems. Why? Because there are some people who wants to come and dictate to you what you're supposed to do in your country. Therefore, you have this kind of challenges day in, day out. Because this so-called governance, it's not for us. We have got our own style of leadership. We've got our own style of governance, which our forefathers before 1800 used to do. I'll end there, my sister, and thank you so much. Let me give others opportunity to speak, because this topic is very sensitive and very, very important, because an African child should know where to start and where to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bashona. That was very helpful. And I agree with you 100%. I think also the Western world is not really helping us when it comes to even the democracy they preach to, because when you look at the Western world, a lot of them keep doing businesses with these, our so-called leaders. While the leaders are killing their citizens, suffering their citizens, the Western world is busy, signing some business treaties, and all that. It doesn't even make sense. And then the next minute is they are shouting, "Oh, this leader is a dictator. This leader is this." It doesn't fit very well. I think you are very, very correct in that regard. But the problem is most of us seem to think that our solution is found in the West, which I, for one, I've come to understand that that's not very true, because my people have been suffering for 60 years and more, and I don't think the West is in any position to help us right now, because since for like 6 years that we actually went into like a full-fledged war, the West keeps, doing business with the government of Cameroon. They keep signing their businesses, agreement, exploitation, like they want to get petrol, they want to get timber. It's like nothing is going on. And then you begin to ask yourself, these same people that we are hoping that are coming to help us are the same people talking to the government, pretending like everything is fine. All they can do is go on Twitter and maybe write 1 or 2 sentences and keep condemning things that they know very well that they are in no position or they don't want to help. I think we are the only ones that can actually help ourselves. You know, it's after I have been in the struggle for 7 years and I looked around and I discovered that no, I think Africans need to find a solution to their problems. That's why we came up with the idea of, you know, we all have the same problems, and just maybe if we help each other, we might get those solutions that we think are going to come from the West. We have seen other African countries use protests to basically take out a whole government. So maybe if we try that, we encourage each other, maybe we'll get to fix our countries without involving outsiders. And at the end of the day, when we look at most countries that the West got involved in, the countries are not doing very well either. Look at Libya. Libya basically is in ruins. At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, what were they fighting for? You know?
Just bring the nice sense forward.
You're very right.
Yes,
And I hope going forward.
And then
I'm sorry about that. And I'm believing that going forward, we all will learn along the way. Those of us who've already learned our lessons, that they usually say that charity begins at home. I guess our own solutions will begin from us, not from someone else, from somewhere who basically is part of the problem. So we have a lady, Comfort. I don't know if she's listening to us, but she's made a remark. She said the men have taken over the space, and it's what we have been fighting for. In Africa, the men keep taking over the government and not doing very well, and she doesn't seem to be very happy about it. So I asked her if she wanted to speak. Then she said she wanted to speak. I don't know if she's listening, and she can unmute herself and speak to us, maybe on behalf of all of us, the ladies.
Madam, I don't think she's on the platform yet.
Oh, I guess. Oh, okay. Then that's fine. If she's not there, then we should move on. So our next speaker is Ikem. Ikem, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Okay. All right, please. Would love you to introduce yourself to the house.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I was just scrolling through Twitter, which I began to use. I mean, I was registered there earlier, but I began to be active, just a couple of months ago, before my country's just concluded election. So first of all, I'll start by introducing myself. I like saying this as well, seeing my African brothers and sisters. So my name is Ikem Onyelagu, and I'm from Nigeria. Even though I live in America, I've been in America for like over 20 years. So I go back and forth as well. I'm a lawyer as well. So I think the introduction is okay, right? I'll just, I like this effects of bad governance, which unfortunately the earlier speaker and the host, you've kind of like elaborated on that as well. Bad governance plagues the whole African countries, unfortunately, okay? And the consequences are terrible. Well, we all see that, okay? There's poverty, there's disease, there's a lack of a development. There's early death. Like if you check, you will see that that the life expectancy rate of most African countries are just within the same range, 52, 53 years old, attributed to basically poor governance and sickness. Now, let me just say that the earlier speaker touched about systems of governance. Currently, I'm working on a PhD program that has a chapter that talks about the fact that systems of governance doesn't really matter, because if you just take a look from original times, even till today, you see if you see Switzerland, they have a different system of government. It's working. You see the US, they have their system of governance is working. You have China, is an autocratic, a democratic government to some extent, but with the consent of their people. So you see, systems of, while it's okay for each country to adapt, where I'll agree with the host and the former speaker is that, yes, we don't have to copy. We just have to just do what works for us. Because no matter your system of governance, you see, if you focus on that, then you diminish the personal responsibility that each and every one of these countries, each and every one of us has. Okay, let's not rule out the fact that our societies, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, everywhere in Africa, increasingly, if you allow evil to take root, here's what happens. It grows tentacles, okay? That evil becomes an institution in itself. Okay, look at Nigeria. Same thing. Okay, once the politicians go in everywhere, guess what? Those politicians come from within who we are as a people. So because we allowed that to fester for so long, we become all corrupt. We can't even protest, When we try to protest, guess what? Because that corruption has become an institution, they use the money, just some few crumbs from the table, and we can't do anything. So we have our personal responsibilities. So the governance that we have is just a reflection of who we are. I personally agree that trying to copy the American democracy is actually misguided. Okay, let me give you one instance of what I mean by having corruption to really take root. Now, in Nigeria, okay, we had a constitution, the 1979 constitution, okay, then it was amended in 1999. Now, some of my classmates, okay, who took part in the amendment of that constitution, they put in self-serving provisions of the constitution. You see, this is an example of what I mean. When you allow corruption to take root, it becomes an institution. Most of the institutions that you have in Nigeria, and I'm using Nigeria as an example, most of those institutions make laws now legitimizing corruption. Okay, there is what you call the Revenue Mobilization Corporation in Nigeria. Now, this is a group that sets the salaries of elected officials and public servants. By the public servants, I mean, the normal bureaucracy that is in every country, like in the departments and the executive directors. Do you know what they have done now over the past 20 years? Every year, they have now made legal. Are you all aware? Because there are some journalists on this forum, and you all aware that Nigerian elected senators, do you know how much that they earn every year? They're the highest paid in the world. So in other words, corruption has now been enshrined legally. You're making $2.5 million. They have what you call newspaper allowance, radio allowance, dressing allowance, and these people now, executive directors, that's why you have the lobby for positions, because just getting into those positions, you are made. Here's another thing that they did as well. Why would you copy America? America, if you go back 50 years ago, the level of American development 50 years ago is far more developed than any of those African countries, except probably maybe South Africa. And I say South Africa in terms of infrastructural development. So now They copied having elections every 4 years. Why? Because you came to the West and you copied it. So you see, when we've allowed these things to take root, we're in a real terrible, we're in a ditch. Okay. So the first thing is to just stop digging, first of all, but it's going to take quite some time. Okay. Now, one of my graduate programs that I had in La Salle University was the consequences of money laundering by politically exposed persons in Nigeria. I'm now expanding on that PhD program as well, and I'm capturing so many countries from Zimbabwe. You know, I was in law school in Nigeria in 1992, and I was a friend to the High Commissioner that was in Lagos State. I think his name is Mr. Mulambo. I understand is now late. Now, the Zimbabwean High Commission in Nigeria was run very, very effectively, you know. So I remember speaking to him. So he was telling me about what the late Robert Mugabe, you know, that if I ever visit Harare, you know, that the civil service is actually one of the best. Now, this was in 92, 93, you know, well, that the civil service was a copy from some area that is very, very efficient, and that is reflected in what is there now. But it looked like it was a downhill from there as well. So the effects of bad governance, it is, you can never, there's no end to the consequences of it. All I can say is that our generation, we might be a generation, and I include each and every one of us here, because we all are brothers and sisters. We might be a generation that might not necessarily make a difference. Now, we might eventually make some sacrifices. You all remember the Roman Empire, right? At that time, when the Roman Empire was in existence, those and the historians of that day, some of the liberal ones, said that there could be no country greater than the Roman Empire. Well, at that time, they never knew that a country like the United States was going to come up. So evil will never last there forever. But I want each and every one of us to understand that this is the beginning, because this is worse. If you look at your countries and look at the children, our children, you know, those kids that are 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, now, they've been born into this particular dysfunction, and they will be part of it. Now, the civil service that we used to have over the past years has been destroyed. So if the people that we've had that have gone to school and are now part of the civil service of each and every one of our countries, imagine what the future portends. That's why I'm saying that we'll still see the worst before we see the light. Anyway, I think I'll just leave it at that. But I like the title, and I want to, you know, I want to participate in things like this. I mean, I want to give my time to this. I mean, I just came back from church here in Atlanta. I stay in Atlanta, Georgia. I was planning to go back to Nigeria. Actually, I would have been there 2 weeks ago, but I'm sure you all see what was going on. Okay, the federal government came up with well, a good economic and financial policy of trying to redesign the currency in order to stem inflation. That's a good idea. I've never seen any financial economist who disagrees with that. But the timing and the execution of that was terrible. So I can tell you that in the past 3 weeks, of course, I'm not there now because there's no money available. You know, you can't see any money. So it is too sad and too bad that our country, the blame doesn't lie on France or the US. All they're interested is in our money. But you know what? They don't force us to do business with them. We do business with them because we're fraudulent. You know, so I thank you for allowing me to participate. I'll check whenever you're on, and you know, I'll just stay and listen. Yeah, because I like this. I like this interaction, and you know, that's where we learn. I look forward to participating, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kem, Ikem.
Yes.
Yes, thank you very much from Nigeria. You made some very meaningful contributions there. Yeah, the space is often hosted 5th of every month, and yes, we choose specific topics general to African countries where each country could identify with the problems or with the topic, and we discuss. And we always discuss the problem, and towards the end of the space, we make proposals and discuss solutions at individual, institutional, state, and continental level. And we also have a Telegram group, One Africa, where we always share ideas from time to time. And we also discuss on topics that reflect contemporary realities of the continent and issues that are making headline news in different countries. That's why today the focus was effects of bad governance in looking at the fact that we are just from having general elections in Nigeria. We have a couple of people to talk about that, and looking at the fact that we'll be having elections in Zimbabwe in the next 6 months. We have to discuss too about that, and the fact that Ghana is also preparing in the few months to come to also have elections in Cameroon with its specificity of crisis, security crisis, internal war, and indefinite stay of a president in power for a very long time, with possibilities of constitutional arrangement for power, father to son kind of leadership, like the situation of Nyakshimbe and Yandema of Togo and the son, Foreign Nyakshimbe, and or the situation of Omar Bongo and son, Ali Bongo, or the situation of Idris Deby and now Muhammad Deby in Chad. So Cameroon, he has been on the spotlight on the issue of transition, and that's why many are putting hands together as young Cameroonians to say that that should not be accepted again. Well, the problems are at different level based on the countries, and like my brother Bernard rightly put it, when you go to other countries, you will discover that maybe you can be in your own side and say, hey, we are suffering um, economic hardship or economic dictatorship or exploitation, but other people are in condition of war where they cannot even survive, like they are not even there to talk or to give the testimony. So the worst of it all is war, because in condition of war we can't do anything. We cannot even talk. We cannot even express all the tenets and principles that Mr. Idris Amine gave. We can't do that. So the worst of it is war, and that's what we should avert at all costs, because every life for us is precious and priceless, and on no condition should a human be given that power to take another human's life. You know, even in the worst conditions, there must always be dialogue, negotiations, and discussions around it. So right now, we will like to hear from Mr. Nash Noir, who is also a journalist from Ghana. Yes, Mr. Michael, your hand is up, but we would like to hear from someone that have not spoken before we come back to you. Meanwhile, we're encouraging the ladies, maybe our African women who are listening, for those who would like to speak from the perspective of African women, to also come share their thoughts with us. It's very important. We would not like to make it just a space for the men. You can see the host is a woman. Nalowa B is a barrister that have faced persecution from Cameroon as she spoke against the government of President Paul Biya, and have to take refuge in Nigeria and then subsequently in Germany because her security had been threatened. She had a lot of physical and psychological harassment. So she's been very active advocating for the rights of women, young girls, African child, and the African continent at large. And that's why she stood up and said this initiative important. So if you are a woman, I think it's important to also support your fellow woman. That's the gender solidarity, you know, and perhaps it's all about hearing from everyone. No one knows everything, everyone knows something. That's our principle, and so we should participate actively into the conversations of constructing a better continent. And don't forget to follow the host, the speakers, myself, and other people that you think they are insightful enough to you, and that you can check their profile and see that it's good and worthwhile following. We have a couple of experts here and people that could be of importance to us, maybe as we are moving around the continent. We have a lot of journalists and we have reporters, we have experts, we have people of some good mental sound mind that could be of help to us individually and collectively. So, Mr. Noah, you have the mic now. Thank you so much. Be precise, concise, straight to the point, and help us understand the perspective of the topic. Thank you. Hey, Mr. Noah Nash, are you there? Hello, sir. Okay, it appears Noah is not there. So, Mr. Michael, I will come back to you. Please just be precise with your contribution. Thank you.
Many thanks. If bad governance, there's only, as I said, I wasn't going to comment much on Zimbabwe. If bad governance was the ability of my people to take back the land from the white colonizer, then that's a bad governance I'm willing to sacrifice for, because that had to happen. You know, if bad governance is about Zimbabweans learning how to use that land, perhaps it's something that we have to work within those poverties in order for us to actually make it work for us. If bad governance is resisting the American sanctions that are on our country, then that's something that me as an African child, I'm willing to take pain for. Because when the Americans were building their systems, none of us were here. The cheap labor they used, nobody puts that to account. The lives they killed and mutilated, abused for hundreds and hundreds of years, nobody understands them to the point they are today. If the democracy and change of power is what African children are seeking, perhaps we've got lessons learned to what we see. I worked in Afghanistan and traveled to Afghanistan many a times, flown into that space, fighting alongside the Americans and 42 nations, including Saudi Arabia. One thing that I learned about the democracy and the principles that are brought to us by the Western world, they're never there to save our people or save the people of that land. If it was, indeed, Afghanistan would not be in the hands of the back of the Taliban. Hillary Clinton, when she left, she was asked, what is the most regrettable thing that you have done that happened to you in power? The most regrettable thing she highlighted was the hunger for the young Libyans to take over power from their leader. She said in her own words, that point is the saddest point of my career, because after we helped them take out their leader, they came back to America to seek on how to govern themselves. What a shame. Libya had created the best water system that had never seen on this land. The money that they had created, the gold that they were getting to, was going to see a different Libya, a powerful country across Africa and perhaps global. So perhaps the changes we are seeking and fighting for, we have to understand what we are fighting for and the change we are seeking. So when we speak of this bad governance, what are we judging it upon? How is the measure of how you're judging this? And that should be the question to the African child. Like I said, I did not come here to dismiss the pains of those that might have pains caused or harm caused by their governments. But I'm asking and speaking to an African child, saying, What is the governance? The effects of the bad governance. How did we get here? Who pays for our school fees? Who's paying for the medicines that our countries are using today? If it's your country and there's donor money in there, is part of your government funded by the Western donor funds? Perhaps your lack of governance, understanding governance is very limited. We have to be speakful and to speak in truth to ourselves. Until our governments can fund themselves and fund throughout without the assistance of anybody else in the West, that is when we can talk about the effects of those governments. Because at the moment, if we look across Africa, we are young nations. The most is about 70 to 80 years old. It is nice, and the feeling I'm getting from this position, from this platform, it's a beautiful feel because we are all hungry to see better. But what matters when it comes to these issues is how you fight the war. How do you fight for the changes you are seeking? How do you travel there? And what is good governance according to how you understand it? How do you police it? How do you resource it? And how do you push innovation within that? If changing presidents or power is governance, to a sign of good governance, then I'm sure we are lost as an African society, as African children. That should be, because power will always change if you resource your systems well. If you select in the initial stages, even from the opposition parties that you are seeking to support, how are they structured?
Hello,
Are
Mr.
they
Mike.
Can I land?
Yes, Mr.
The
Mike.
opposition.
There is a question from a listener. I just wanted to put it up to you if you can give your opinion on that. Please ask the speaker, the gentleman who said we should use our own system to govern. That's very vague. Africans are not a monolith. With ethnic diversity and differences in culture, what African system can be implemented? Is there anything as an African system? Where is it found? Where has it been implemented? And how can we implement this? Because as I know, all what is in Africa is a jumbled up mixture of both colonial and some aspects of African culture altogether. So, is there an African system? That is the question. So, please, maybe before you come to that, Mr. Hopewell, journalist from Zimbabwe, will want to go. He just indicated. So, I will give him the mic in 2 minutes to give a conclusive statement. Thank you for your patience and for understanding. Thank you very much. Mr. Hopewell, you have the mic before you can go.
Thank you very much, Fabrice. It has been a very interesting Twitter Spaces. I just want to say, we should understand that we Africans who are asking for good governance, they are not asking it for because of the West. They are asking it for themselves. There are issues that we hear from time to time from dictatorships, which try to cover up their tracks, what they're doing, saying, "Oh, we're fighting the West, we're fighting white people." In Zimbabwe, we're told that we're fighting white people, but we've just discovered that our government, the biggest recipients of our government corruption, is actually the white Rhodesians, who they have been accusing us of working for, and yet it's them who are actually working with those white Rhodesians. It's going to come out in the Al Jazeera film that has been advertised on Al Jazeera. I've heard misplaced arguments and comparisons and examples of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is Saudi Arabia. It's not a democracy, and it is never pretended to be a democracy. Zimbabwe is a democracy on paper. We go for elections, and Zimbabweans are demanding a better society for themselves. We don't care what the Saudis do. They do what they do in Saudi Arabia, but we as Zimbabweans should be judged on the basis of what we want and on the basis of what our constitution says. It's not that citizens are just asking for something that is not there. Citizens are asking for something that is in our constitution. They are simply saying, please adhere to the constitution. We live in a corrupt society where the biggest hospitals, the big 5 hospitals in Zimbabwe don't have paracetamol. The whole country does not have a single radiotherapy machine. I keep saying this so that people understand the effects of terrible bad governance, which is driven by corruption. There is no standard in as far as good governance to say good governance according to who? Good governance according to ourselves. I want to go to a hospital that has medication. I want to go to a hospital that has equipment to treat people that have got cancer. In our country, the whole country does not have a single heart bypass machine. If you are involved in a car accident and you have a heart attack and you need urgent surgery, you're going to die. We don't have those things because of bad governance, because of thieving. Perhaps we should start moving away from using the word corruption and use thieving, because that's what it is. They steal public funds and then they try to sanitize it by bringing rhetorical, ideological arguments about the West, about white people. And yet here in Zimbabwe, they steal with white people. The white people laugh at them, they call them their puppets, and they don't say anything because they're scared of them. But when it's black people, black Zimbabweans who are complaining, they round them up, they throw them into prison. Right now, our vice president has just been called a dunderhead by one of the most corrupt white people in this country, a gold smuggler, people who smuggle cigarettes into neighboring African countries. And I've never had a sense of revulsion from the ruling party supporters, including the gentleman who has just been speaking, Michael. They haven't said anything because they're scared of these white people in Zimbabwe. And yet they accuse other Zimbabweans of being pro-white, and yet we are asking for them to respect black people so that when black people go to hospitals, black people have access to medication. When black people send their kids to school, those kids have got access to books. When black people open their taps in their homes, there's clean drinking water that comes out of it. Not this old rhetorical, ideological stuff that is thrown into the table. In fact, Africans should move away from the rhetorical nonsense that is always put on the table by so-called people who are fighting against the West. The war we have with the West has to be based on national interest. You cannot say you're fighting a war against the West when you are stealing money that is meant to buy medication for pensioners. And then you say you are in a war with the West. No, you're a thief. You're not in a war with the West. You are in a war against your own people. And these people should be told that and not sugarcoat this stuff. We should tell them that they are thieves. They're stealing from their own people. They're stealing money that is meant. Right now in Zimbabwe, pensioners are getting as little as $5 or $10 a month. The pension fund was looted by ZANU-PF. And they don't even deny it. We know who did it. One of the ministers who did it was just thrown out of cabinet, arrested a couple of times, and now they're saying there's no case. And people are caught with gold trying to smuggle it to Dubai. We are told there's no case. This particular government, which is in place, has never arrested and sent anyone to prison for any significant corruption crime. Never. And yet billions have been looted. I live in one of the most affluent areas in Harare, and yet we don't have water. It's not a township. there's this idea that, okay, townships, they've got problems, but even many parts of it, they don't have water. Now, if you can't provide water for your people, and yet you're one of the most wealthiest countries with gold, diamonds, platinum, lithium, everything. And when we talk about bad governance, you start referring to the West, to America, to Britain. No, we are not ruled by the British or by the Americans. We are ruled by our own people who are stealing money that is meant to build our country and make sure that we live decent lives. Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciated listening to many other voices, and I hope we can continue with these conversations and not sugarcoat stuff. Thank you.
Sorry, co-host, don't allow him to go. We want to ask him questions because this journalist is lying, pure lie. We want to ask him questions. So please don't let him go. We have got so many questions. He needs to be accountable for his utterance. So we need to ask him questions. Don't allow him to go, please, with all due respect. Don't allow him to go because I've got questions for him. We want to know which hospital is he talking about that doesn't have paracetamol in Zimbabwe. Himself, he was at Harare Hospital few days ago, where young students were involved in accident, and these young students were got their medical attention and everything at government hospital. But he was there. He has got some pictures in one of the wards at Harare Hospital, which is referring to. So this kind of journalism, this is what we are refusing in Africa, where people receiving few dollars, and then they will come in this platform starting to lie, bashing their own country, lying like this, and at the end of the day, they claim that they are journalists. We want him to be accountable for telling us this kind of lies. He is moving around telling us there's no paracetamol in government hospital, yet he's
I'm
always
happy
at
to
government
account.
hospitals.
Can you ask your questions before I go?
You were at Harare Hospital, Hopo. You were at Harare Hospital. At this
The
hospital,
problem with you, ZANU guys, you come to these spaces and
it's not about ZANU PF, it's
and you
about
start
Zimbabwe. It's
disturbing
not
them.
about ZANU PF, it's about Zimbabwe.
Please,
I'm talking
please,
as a Zimbabwean. I never
please.
declare my.
I think the emotions are really getting high. We shouldn't take conversations here personal, please. We are trying to be constructive. You can disagree with someone without necessarily using words that will affect the person's personality, and we are on ideas, and competition is very important for emancipation. Competition is important to bring out the best ideas and the best strategies of how to make our societies better. So please, I think that we have a lady, Comfort Dondo, who wants to say something. Her hand is up, and I'm sure it's in relation to the topic. What has been the crux of the matter between Mr. Hopewell and Mr. Bashona, who understand the stakes of Zimbabwe better than all of us here. But I think that we have our different views. Apart from someone from Zimbabwe contradicting the ideas of another person from Zimbabwe, is the same thing. Like another person from Nigeria will say that the honorable, what he said was not true. They wrote to me on inbox, but I just say yes. In the next space that we organize, you bring your point and be ready to speak, but you don't attack anyone. So you just make sure that you give your ideas and you make them with your own solutions, what you propose, because any criticism that do not have a corresponding proposal is not constructive criticism. It should have a corresponding proposal that is equivalent to that criticism, or even more than it. So I will give the mic now to Comfort, and then we will come back to Mr. Bashona later, please, so that you can have some few minutes to calm down. Thank you. Comfort, you have the mic. Hey, Comfort, are you there? Please. Comfort Dondo, women rights advocate, are you there? It appears Comfort is not there. Mr. Charles Mzua, knowledge is a process, change is permanent. Okay. Mr. Charles, are you ready to give contribution?
Fabrice,
yes.
Fabrice, are you hearing me? Comfort says that we need to unmute her. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I muted everyone. I forgot that it was still there. Oh, sorry.
Hello, thank you so much. I was muted also. Can I speak?
No, Mr. Charles, just hold on. Let Comfort speak first.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm about to take my kids out for a movie. Yeah, thank you so much, host, co-host. Host, thank you for reading my messages and just taking it as it is, right? So I wanted to say what you just witnessed, my friends, is what the effects of bad governance are. Where we have our brother Hopo Chingono, who is a journalist who is living and based in Zimbabwe, speaking of his lived experiences, right? And then you have Bashona, who we don't know his name, he's a ghost, but we know he's working for the regime, negating the experiences of a citizen who's living in Zimbabwe. These are the effects of bad governance. And I think what's so bad about it is that most of these people that are fighting against and shutting down the voices of citizens and negating the lived experiences of my fellow Zimbabweans, for instance, are they themselves not based in Zimbabwe, which I find very hypocritical, right? That's one. The second thing, I think the effects of bad governance, I'll give an example that is very close to home with South Cameroon that we've shared, is when you have a president like Paul Biya in Washington, D.C., at the summit in December, not even aware of where he's at, where he makes a comment about if he's a celebrity and why they're taking his picture. That's bad governance. When leaders don't know when to step down and give room for the younger, more innovative leadership to take over, when our leaders historically are strong men, and we see it being played out here on this stage where I just got joined by my other sister here, the women don't take up space because culturally men take up too much space, and we don't know how to take space when we feel like the space is overly male, right? If you look at the pictures of the African Union, any kind of leadership space in Africa, you see the problem and the disconnect. To me, that is the effects of bad governance, right? So I just wanted to say, I cannot add on to what Hopo said, but what you just witnessed is, from my own country, the effects of bad governance. I also think the effects of bad governance is when we have people who have a tribal mentality of, what is not familiar to me is wrong completely. I have been told that I am a project of the White House. This imperialist narrative, it goes too far. There's a brother from Nigeria who just said, why would we copy the American system? And to that, I push back King Ikeham and I say, we copy what works and we get rid of what doesn't work. The last time I looked out my window, the world is very global. It's a global village. So I live in a country that I still have people that still say we died for this country and they're still working. I said, are you a ghost? They're still holding on to the fact that they went to war and the fact that we were not born when the war happened. We are not therefore eligible to take on leadership. So they're still using the rhetoric of imperialism, which is long overgone. And we hold on to those things that imperialism happened, yes, but they use it conveniently to their advantage when it works for them, right? Versus us. I think at some point we have to stop using that rhetoric too much, and it's abused. As Hopo said, I won't repeat too much because he already said most of what I wanted to say. The upcoming documentary with Al Jazeera shows that our leadership in Zimbabwe have been siphoning minerals out of Zimbabwe at the detriment of the average Zimbabwean, where we have, at least 4 women dying in child labor. At least 4 women die in child labor, because of no infrastructure in hospitals, right? And we have about $150 million worth of that's recorded, worth of minerals being siphoned out of the country. And they're doing that with a former Rhodesian, who then belittles our leaders. So I think this idea of the imperialism narrative, it has to stop because it's just another crutch that we're using. We have to be accountable. Bashona, I talked about accountability. I don't know what your real name is. And I think we have to get rid of these ghost things. We have to come here with our birth names. We have to really be accountable. And what does accountability look like? It looks like taking ownership of where we have failed. Bad governance is where you don't think you are wrong in some ways, and you continue to point fingers at others. Good governance is when you look at your blind spots and you correct those, and then you move on and stop blaming everybody else outside of yourself. So with that being said, I think those are my comments. I'm glad that we have a few more females on stage. Happy International Women's Month. Bad governance results in women and girls as the low-hanging fruit being impacted by men's decision, especially the old strong man mentality in Africa. I hope in my generation I get to see more women leaders like the Tanzanian president taking up space, or my new friend, the Gambian First Lady, who takes charge independent of her husband, Adam Barrow. I hope we can have more voices that actually speak up for the marginalized, not people that are just looking and begging for lunch money and not really telling the true narrative as a continent. Sister Naloa, thank you so much for using your pain as a platform. I'll connect with you in your DM and hopefully we can do some work together on the continent. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You know, my sister, I'm sure when you posted my picture, you were looking for me, and I think you have got a crush on my handsome. I'm very handsome guy, very young Zimbabwean, and very, very hardworking. So if you want to know my name, please come to my DM. I've got a son called Shona. That's why my name there is called Baba Shona. It means I'm a father of one, a very young, handsome, and intelligent young man.
Can we get back to the discussion, please, and not this nonsense?
Yeah, your nonsense is what you are saying, Opo. That's what you want to correct you here. I want to correct you here because you are here. Because we have got a tendency of blocking people who correct you, and you block them because you don't want to engage people. So I'm very, very thankful for my sister to give us this platform and to correct you and you to be accountable of your lies. Number one, that I want to correct you. You move around and...
Excuse me, host and co-host. I've just arrived, but I thought Bashon had already spoken.
No, it's my time
there are other speakers here.
It's my time to talk.
Well, we haven't spoken.
Who should be speaking now?
Exactly.
No,
I thought Charles was supposed to speak.
Can you give...
Charles, hold on. I was given time to respond. Charles, I was given time to respond.
No, you were not, and I did not hear that when I came onto the space. It's Charles who's supposed to speak. No, I was here listening. I was not on the speaker's podium. Anyway, it's Charles who's next.
Fabrice, can you kindly correct us, please, so that we can move on?
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Maybe I can speak. I've been given the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much, the host, for recognizing that I was requesting to speak in this platform. This platform is very important for me, and I can get that Africans are not comfortable with the situations in which they are surviving in or their experiences in different countries. But what I would like to say is I've got, from all the discussions which are taking place, I think for me, we are not going to the problem. For me, bad governance in which we are discussing here is just a symptom of the main problem, which is affecting Africa. Why I'm saying bad governance is a symptom, not the main problem. Bad governance, for me, it's like we are expecting good governance. But my question is, you are expecting it from who? The problem with Africa is on leadership, or else the governors themselves, because we are saying we have bad governance. Yes, we have got bad governance, but do we expect good governance from bad governors? That's where the problem is. The East, the West, or the imperialism, or you want to talk of maybe capitalism or communism or socialism, all those things you may speak of or you may talk of, those people are not coming to Africa to help you. They are coming to Africa to take your resources. They want your resources. And if you look into the fact that the West at times go on the sitting table with your leaders whom you think are bad and so on, and also the Eastern people. Don't blame those people. Those people are playing the party which is important to their citizens. They are playing a party which is very important to their citizens. They are trying to gather resources for their citizens. Then what is important is to have good governors whom whenever they go on the table with either the West or the East, the Chinese or the Americans or the Europeans and so on, they should be the people, the right people to go there on the table and discuss important things. But the problem we have in Africa is we have the West people in leadership positions. I'm telling you this, some of the people I've seen in the West knows me. I have taught in 2 universities in Zimbabwe. I've taught politicians in Zimbabwe. The better part of our systems of governance is that we have people, the West, sorry for using strong language, but we have fools in leadership positions. And we expected these fools to make sophisticated decisions which cater for more generations to come in the future. What type of people are we as Africans? We are talking of accountability. We are expecting accountability from the people who goes into power, not because we are the people who selected them. They choose to go into power. Even if we do some elections, these people can choose whether they want to assume power, even if they lose or when they win. And in so doing, we are expecting the same people to be accountable to us, the people who didn't select them to be in leadership positions. So the problem we have as Africa is that we don't have good leaders. And these leaders are the people who are causing all these problems. Be it democracy or else be it dictatorship, as what we see in the eastern side and so on. Whichever governance style which you may want to think of, that governance system can produce good results on the ground if the people whom are going into these leadership positions are being selected by the people, or else if not being selected by the people, but at least the people who are in those countries or in these nations are stamping or else are giving them the mandate to do so. And at the same time, the people themselves, are they informed enough to hold these leaders into account? Most of us, we are not informed, because at the same time, look at it, the situation in Zimbabwe. There is this Al Jazeera issue which is coming right now. Do you know, we have people whom because they follow a certain political party, they're supporting their leaders, even if they're doing wrong things, looting resources and sending them to build Dubai, to build the Middle East or China or the West. All that shows that you have got bad leaders. Your leaders are bad. You can't expect good governance from bad governors. You expect good governance from good governance from good governors. So our problem is on leadership, or our governors or administrators of our economies. We are taking fools, stupid people to run our economies, and we expect the best results from those people. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think Western course. Let me respond to what Opos and Comfort were saying, so that I can go.
Hello, it's Naloa here.
Okay.
Yeah, just a moment, please. We are actually running out of time. So for now, what we are hoping to do is we want to give the space for more women to speak. And after that, then the men, if you have something else to add, you can add if you have already spoken. So for now, we would hope that Ms. Goramia, I hope I pronounced that well. If you are on, please unmute your mic and speak. Are you there?
Hi, Nalo. It's Ramai, actually.
Okay.
Okay, so we are talking about bad governance, but sometimes some people mix up the thing. I work in project management as a consultant, so governance is one of the pillars of running any project. And when we talk of governance, somehow we get mixed up in so many other things. But what we're looking at is a structure that was constructed in terms of how our government or how we live as a society. Sometimes that goes wrong and we have derailed a bit because of sanctions, but it doesn't mean purely that we have bad governance. We might not follow it to a T, but for someone to come here and say he lives in an affluent area without water, but not making it accountable to the right governance in place for that water, it seems to be quite flawed to just blame the top end when in fact it's the council that is actually in charge of the water. I was in Zimbabwe for 4 months, and I don't live in that affluent area. And I know for a fact that Mbare never runs out of water, which is a high density area, or even Highfield. There was always water. I live in waterfalls, and there was always water in the tap, right? And then when you look about the medication,
You are now
how
lying.
can I,
All those
Charles,
places
you
doesn't
sound
have water.
sharp.
You are
How can
lying.
I lie?
You
I
are
was in
lying.
Zimbabwe.
You are
How
lying.
can
And
I lie?
I live in
How can
Zimbabwe
I lie?
also.
How can I lie?
No.
I had to mute everyone. Please, the speakers, I would not want to take off anybody, because if I take you off, then you are not able to join the space again. Please, if you have not been called up to speak, please do not speak. We are all mature Africans and individuals. I'm expecting that we should all respect each other, especially the women. We should respect the women. Please. We wouldn't want to be muting everyone and unmuting everyone. It doesn't speak well of us as a people. It means we can have a decent conversation amongst ourselves. Then how do we intend to fix the countries that we are hoping to fix? Now I'm going to unmute everyone. Please, please, I'm begging. Only when you are called up to speak that you should speak.
Sorry, Nala. Carry on now.
Yes, please.
Okay. And secondly, if we had no paracetamol, no need of medication in terms of maybe we might not have enough medication, we might not be that there'll be a high death rate of people every day. I remember during 2008, when there was hunger in Zimbabwe, people were dying from preventable diseases. But at the moment, the funerals even in Mbare, when I walked there used to be like 4 deaths a day. When my grandmother died, the same day that my grandmother's buried, in front of my grandmother's, there's a young person who died from, from HIV and so forth. So when you look at it, we have a lot of alarmists within our system who don't really want to look on how we can have a modern society, innovation, whereby we encourage each other to improve our governance. And that doesn't mean the government alone can do it alone. We have to improve our processes. There's a lot of bureaucracy within our systems. And then when we talk about gold, we need to look at the supply chain. Who is actually mining this gold? Who's actually at the top of the chain? How does that money supply trickle from the bottom to the top? Because obviously, if you look at it from an angle saying there's 10% and so forth, but there's the people who are actually mining the gold are Zimbabweans. Black Zimbabweans are mining the gold and they're making a living out of that gold. So the supply chain is actually well fed from the bottom. We're seeing improvement in the livelihood of people in Mount Darwin. We're seeing improvement in the livelihood of people of Gurule, who actually are rural folks. And we need to mention those good gains instead of looking at it in terms of corruption, because they would have bought it from somewhere, right? So in trickle-down effect has to be mentioned in a proper manner. And then we have to look at sanctions and how, in terms of trying to make gold in Zimbabwe as bad as they did about the diamonds in Zimbabwe and saying that they were blood diamonds. Now you're attacking us for our own wealth that is improving the impoverished nation of Zimbabwe in terms of the job creation that is created and opportunities for a lot of people that I was speaking to, right? So some people here are here to slander. They're not here for the good and the benefit of the whole nation. And they need to be stopped for speaking such most of the time, because we're here for the truth. We don't get paid for it. We love our country as much as you do, but we see the positive as well as the negative, and we weigh it out accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Is it Ruth? Yes, Miss Ruramai. Thank you very much for your contribution. I just wanted to remind us that obscene language is not tolerated here. Language like you're lying is not the truth. Please, we are not in court for people to judge whether the statement of another person is truth or lie. We are making meaningful contributions, because when someone is speaking and you unmute yourself to attack the person, it's indecent and unacceptable. Always
Fabrice, I think you're breaking. You're breaking, Fabrice.
Are you hearing me clearly now?
Now it's better. Now it's better.
Madam Naloya, I think we're having problems.
Hello? Okay, it seems like, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you. I think
Okay.
Fabrice is dropped.
It seems like Fabrice is having network issues. All right, so I'm sorry, the men seem to be complaining that their hands are up, but we are not giving them the chance to speak. A lot of men have spoken, and we were hoping that the women also will speak before we go back to the men. So it's not like
Sorry,
it's
I'm also here, my host. Can you see me?
Not.
It's Alani.
All right. Okay, that's fine. So you can take the floor, and after you, then we can have a man speak. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, host. I hope everybody can hear me. I seem to be having a bit of network issues there. But I want to sincerely thank you for opening the space. And the one thing that I really feel we need to hammer on is the fact that, as much as would say it's not right to call someone a liar, but when someone is not providing factual information, that is a lie. So it's not a disrespect to literally correct. Sorry, I'm not sure why I was muted there. Can you guys hear me? I'm not sure. Comfort, can you hear me, host? Anybody?
Yes, I can hear you, sis. I can hear you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So what I was trying to say is, I think a lot of the time, because I feel sometimes that's why women, when it comes to entering into spaces or taking up space, a lot of other women would like that, they feel proud to say that, oh yeah, they've mentioned women, so respect us. But you have to earn that respect. I'm a woman myself, and the moment I hear another woman utter lies on a platform where people have gathered to find out solutions or ways of dealing with the effects of bad governance, I cannot stomach it. And I'll definitely have to speak about it, irrespective of the fact that it's another woman. Let us respect our roles in society, whether you're men or women. That's extremely important. And the background information that was being shared by the previous woman who spoke before me is utter nonsense. Water shortages are happening in Zimbabwe. Everything that Hopewell would have said is factual because he's an investigative journalist. You were listening to someone who's abroad, right? She literally lives abroad in the UK. And it matters to do with Mbare. She's never even been there or lived, let alone lived there. We hear these stories from people that we work with. We hear the stories as well from the charity organizations that are on the ground supporting families that are suffering from the incompetent governance in Zimbabwe currently. We have issues of shortages. We've got issues where diarrhea, things that you cannot even think of, malaria that can be treated are not being treated in Zimbabwe. So when someone speaks from a position of a position where they do not see what is happening in Zimbabwe because it doesn't happen to them, I find that very disturbing. The reason why we have the effects of bad governance to begin with has to start not just with accountability, but transparency. You cannot have accountability without its twin sister, which is transparency. That does not work. You need both of them. This is what is needed in any governance, in any body, in any organization, in any community. You cannot not have those two elements. But what we see happening in Zimbabwe is the fact that these two elements of transparency and accountability are not respected. We have a system of governance that does not believe in any other opposition leader or leaders or people who come to lead Zimbabwe. This is a big problem. And this happens to most countries in Africa. You have a systematic problem where those who liberated you are now the ones who are our colonizers. This is the difficult part, the difficult pill that we're all swallowing. They're no longer white, okay? In the past, they were white. Now they are black, just like you and me, or whichever color you are. And this is the biggest problem. This is the biggest pain that we're suffering in every country that I can think of in Africa. You have people who need to retire, but their same message that they say is, we liberated you from your oppressors. And they think that that is the same message they can keep using until future generations come to be, and they'll still hammer that point. But the point is this. If they liberated us, yes, they did. We agree. They did. Does it mean that they have to now oppress us? I beg to differ. They should not. If we are asking for service delivery, hospitals, for instance, we're talking about women who are having to give birth in the streets, in the roads, rather than in a functional hospital here, right? And we have a Hopewell, who's an investigative journalist in Zimbabwe, who has shown these images, who's said the stories, who told us what is happening. And we have even people who've confirmed what he says. But when he comes on a platform like this, he'll get told by those who support ZANU-PF that it's lies, all because of the propaganda that they seek to put on all of us. But the point is this. We know what is true and we know what is happening. We asked for good governance, but what are we getting? Bad governance. Why is it bad? It is bad because you wake up in the morning, teachers are literally leaving Zimbabwe, doctors are leaving. We've got this whole, exodus of brain drain that is taking place in Zimbabwe currently. And I bet this is happening in Nigeria, in any other African state that has bad governance. Why do the people leave? It's because the service is not working for them. They're not appreciated. They should be getting paid the right amounts of money. How can a teacher get paid $100 a month? What will they do with that? Tell me. Are you going to be able to pay your rent? Are you going to be able to send your children to school? None of these things you're able to do. And many of us, including myself, have become the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for my household. I've become the Ministry of Education in my household. I've become the Minister of even the hospitals in my household. You know why? Because I have to pay those money, send those money for them to make a living, for them to thrive, for them to at least have some semblance of life. So when we come on platforms such as this and we talk about these issues, we are not just dreaming them up from thin air. These are factual information. And the thing that pains me the most, I'll keep repeating this, it's not all women that should be given the same respect. I have to be honest with you, because if we felt the same pain, you would be able to be factual. You don't use the woman card on a platform and expect people not to call you out for lying. I'll definitely do it. And this is what I'm saying right now. The last speaker who spoke before me was lying. Everything she said about there being water in the area she said is utter lies. That is what she was sprouting. And that is not me disrespecting her. That is me correcting the narrative. Let us understand what it means to correct a narrative and what it is to insult somebody. There is a difference there. So in my closing remarks, what I really want to see more of It's people who come with facts when they come on a platform such as the one that Loa has opened, because this is where we get the solutions. And the most interesting thing that I've seen happening right now, there's been this whole propaganda messaging of sanctions are the reason why our countries are not making it, why the people are suffering, why hospitals are not being looked after. But guess what? With the documentary from Al Jazeera, which is proving that there is corruption, there is plundering of resources, there is all manner of things, money laundering going. Money is readily available in our states. Wherever you're from, there is resources in Africa. Africa is rich with resources. But then you find the governments tell you that, no, we can't fix the roads, we can't fix the hospitals because there's no money there. But instead, what they do is they loot, they plunder, they steal. This is the biggest problem that we have. Sanctions are not right. Nobody wants to be sanctioned. Absolutely, I agree with that. But are they doing enough to get those sanctions removed? And let's also look at this. Nobody wakes up in the morning and gets served a breakfast cereal of sanctions. That's not how it happens. There are specific things that do take place for sanctions to be put. Whether the Americas wanted to do something that is beside the point, because we know that's politics. But if you put yourself in a position where you allow them the ammunition to then put sanctions on you, who is to blame? It is you, the government. This is where we need to start focusing our attention on. And I would say, when governance is not fit for purpose, the best way is to remove them from power. You do this in a democratic process. We want more free, fair, credible elections. We do not want the silencing of democratic voices out there, because that's also bad governance. When you cease to allow people to demonstrate, to protest, to speak out and be heard. That's why now we're using social media, because in Zimbabwe, on the ground, or any other African state, the moment you want to challenge wrongdoing that is done by the government, you know what they do? They send the army. They shoot you. If you're not lucky, you will get shot. So this is the problem that we have, where they are using even the armies to silence us. They use the police to silence us. So democratic freedom of speech is no longer allowed. And the moment you see these signs, because you have to look at what are the signs of bad governance, these are what they are. The moment that you are not allowed to speak freely, with respect, remember, it's not everybody who speaks insulting here. We have Hopewell, who's right here. He speaks in a very respectful manner. He presents facts. What do? They arrest him. They threaten him. They do all manner of things. They call him a puppet of the Western states. He's a Zimbabwean. And he's got the right to speak out just like I do. So it doesn't matter the fact that I'm in the UK. The fact that I love my country so much to still talk about the issues that concern it shows you how patriotic I am as a Zimbabwe. You're not defined by where you are in the world. All African people listening here, that will never take Africa away from you. It is in your blood. So wherever you find yourself, wherever you are in the world, I am begging each and every one of you, if you were not taking note of what's happening in your country, now is the time for you to arise and do something about it. You are in a better place to advocate for your brothers and sisters who are back home. They are restricted and limited from doing so, but you can. So I guess my final statement is a call out for action. Act. Thank you. I'll land there.
Thank you, Selani. I want to remind us that our spaces are scheduled spaces, and we always give preference to speakers that were selected for the space before time. That's why at the introductory starting point of the space, we give you introduction of the profile of all the speakers. I think that it's getting to a random stage because most of the speakers did not join on time, and most of them had network issues today. Myself, I find it difficult co-hosting today because of network, and I also think that there are some people who do not want us to do the work conveniently, so they keep on reporting my page or me co-hosting. That's what I notice. So what we have to do is that we have just few minutes to end the space, because we've been on this space for the past 4 hours since 6 p.m. Central African time, and we need to wrap up. at this point, we are not going to keep on articulating grievances. We are just going to give recommendations that are workable for our different countries. We've belabored talking about Zimbabwe for long. I think that the space is not just to look at the critical situation of a singular country. We are all having issues in most of the countries in Africa, because none can say that they are doing so well that they do not need the assistance of the other or are good enough. So when speakers of a particular country take the space to only look at the context of the country, is a little bit worrisome, as those from other countries may get bored and have to leave, because we are looking at the continent. Well, we are looking also at possibilities where we will be hosting space just to listen to people speak of other countries. Yes, and why not? And at that point, we can just say, okay, effects of bad governance in Zimbabwe, or effects of bad governance in Cameroon, or effects of bad governance in Nigeria, and there we just talk about Nigeria, or we just talk about Zimbabwe. But when we say effects of bad governance, it's just a global, and given that we are of the same continent, we're talking about Africa, and we should not limit just to a singular country. Having said that, all those asking the mic to speak now, it will not be possible, because we will be ending the space in the next 10 minutes. So for those that are speakers, I will give you all 1 minute each to make your contributions, which is recommendations. And I will ask all our listeners to drop their suggestions in my inbox or the inbox of the host, Naloa, or myself, Fabrice, and we will take time to read all of them. And I will also share with you the Telegram link in the dashboard. You check it out, and you can integrate if you want to. And you should do well to follow the host, the co-host, and the speakers for updates about subsequent spaces. If you think you can host the space and invite us, no problem. We will come to your space and also listen to you and see how you're coordinating. But we want to make our space a safe space for everyone, where we will not use languages of slander, of smear, of propaganda. It's not that kind of space. We just want to bring constructive minds. Whereas we are criticizing those in power, how are we going to contain others if we come to power? How tolerant are we going to be when we will be in power? If we were able to be those managing the resources and have to take decisions on the lives of millions of people, how better are we going to be? These should be the questions we should ask ourselves, because it's easier to say that XYZ person have not done his or her job. How well are you doing your job in your little corner, in your big corner, in your organization, institution, and in your community? So it starts from individual responsibility before it goes to collective responsibility. And when people put their individual interests in front of collective interests, then we start having a society fragmented with mutual distrust, fear, and suspicion. But when we all look at the collective interests of our society, of our country and continent, we can start saying that there is solidarity. Yes, it's good to blame people outside of Africa, but at the same time, it's good to question ourselves if, apart from the geographical delimited area called Africa, are we really willing to be tolerant to those that do not have the same qualities with us? Are we really ready to respect the uniqueness of other? There are many Africans that are in position of leadership, but when they lose it, they are unable to withstand maybe the difficulties of hunger, the difficulties of all what it comes with it. There are people who cannot withstand persecution for long. There are people who do not have the courage to dare and to speak. There are people who cannot be frontliners. So we should respect everyone in his or her domain. But when people's individual interests are tampering with collective interests, we question them. We follow the due process of law. We see what we can do in order to do it positively and constructively. So thank you all very much for being here with us for this long. We want to thank all people of Nigeria who have been patient and who have followed up the conversations. If you have recommendations, practical or particular to anyone, feel free to inbox them and give it to them there. And we should be ready to welcome criticisms. Want to thank all our Ghanaian brothers and sisters that have been here with us throughout, because it's been awesome having you guys here and hearing from your perspective. We want to appreciate our brothers and sisters who are also passing through tough times in their own country. And with the leadership effect of the 40 years reign of Mr. Paul Biya, we want to thank all South Africans, people of Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Kenya, Uganda that have been here, and our brothers and sisters of Chad and DR Congo. You know, since the English speakers dominated the French speakers, majority of them had to go. But those that have been patient to the end, we really appreciate. Beaucoup d'appréciation pour tous nos frères et sœurs qui ont écouté jusqu'à ce niveau, surtout ceux qui sont dans l'expression francophone, les francophones du Tchad, du RDC, du Cameroun, du Gabon, du Sénégal. On vous dit merci. On est à tout cœur. Donc, le Space va toujours continuer chaque mois, le 5e jour de chaque mois, surtout les dimanches. Et il y a un lien d'un groupe Telegram, One Africa, vous pouvez intégrer pour être aussi avec nous et pour toujours. Et vous pouvez aussi faire les suggestions. Si on peut faire le space pour parler beaucoup plus langue française, pas de problème. Le problème qu'on a ici en Afrique, c'est qu'on n'a que soit anglais ou français pour s'exprimer comme les langues dominantes. Donc, on n'a pas encore une langue africaine qui est trans-africaine. Donc, pour le moment, c'est les langues qu'on doit utiliser. Mais on respecte les idées de tout le monde. On respecte l'opinion de tout le monde. Et on doit être unis en notre diversité. Donc, merci à tous les francophones. So, on that note, I think we will be closing. And I would just like everyone to have 30 seconds. Those who are on the speaker list, please, 30 seconds for us to close, because there are people who have issues to take care of. 30 seconds each. Thank you. I will start with Gloria, and after Gloria, Michael, after Michael, Runami, after Mr. Kem, after Mr. Charles, and Stelani. So in that order, we have 30 seconds each, just as if you were in a political debate or competition. Just assume, and they say 30 seconds to give your recommendations. So, Gloria, you have 30 seconds. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, the host. I just want to appreciate everyone and the opportunity. Well, to boss, you've said everything that I was, if I had given opportunity to say. However, I'm just gonna quickly say that for us to have a good governance, it has to start from you and I. Okay, so if you know that someone who has previously ruled, been in the government for 4 years, and he didn't perform, failed to deliver what you expected, why you elected him, why did you have to go out again to elect the same person? So you are the bad governance. So it has to start from you by making it different, by choosing the right person if you actually want to vote. So that's what I have to say. And host, co-host, like you said, you might be hosting a space that covered global, other African country. That would be very much, very, very good. I would love to see that happen, because we are sisters, and I mean, Africans, we are one, and everyone bears everybody's burden. So thank you, I appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for having me here on the platform. On behalf of the government of Zimbabwe, we are going to be celebrating our next elections, ZANU-PF win, with a 2/3 majority. However, for those that are questioning about good governance, bad governance, it is your responsibility to elect leaders that are going to complement and build Zimbabwe alongside ZANU-PF. So governance is not just about coming and poking. This is why I didn't have an argument with the activists, because it is their role and we are listening to them. That their cries will be taken on board. But however, as we go to the elections, if these activists are not happy with what is happening, let us see by your actions in supporting the people that you think are capable of actually supporting ZANU-PF government. We really, really wish you well. And Africa should continue these conversations, because this is how we hold each other to account and perhaps learn how it is. Zimbabwe will never be a colony again. Many thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Michael. We'll go straight to Mrs. Ruramai. You have the mic. 30 seconds, please.
Thank you. I'm proudly Zimbabwean, and I believe that there's good and bad in Zimbabwe. But first, most of all, I look forward to a better Zimbabwe.
Okay, if she's not available, Mr. Kem,
I'm talking.
Ikem, please, you have 30 seconds to give us your conclusion statement.
I am
Mr.
speaking.
Ikem.
Can you not hear me, Fabrice?
Fabrice, she's speaking. Please go on.
Right. In terms of us getting the better of our country, like what Gloria says, it starts with you and I highlighting what we see and what we can improve. We all have expertise that can enable better, less bureaucracy in Zimbabwe, and provisions that can be made for our citizens as we go. But there's no point of being alarmist and lying. I'm a Zimbabwean. I spend most of my time in Zimbabwe, and I see the differences within my country, and I grow with it. Since 2017, I have seen Zimbabwe growing. And if you do not want to recognize that, that's your problem. But I'm proud of my country, where it's going, and it will get better. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ruramai. And we will be listening to Mr. Ikem. You have the mic, sir.
Yes. I just want to just say thank you to everybody, to the co-host. I think just like the co-host said, it just begins with, I know this is the solution time, but we really don't have time. So it just begins with exactly what the hosts are doing just right now. Okay, the passion, the individual responsibility translates, as the co-host said, to the collective responsibility. The most important thing is just this awareness and this passion. I look forward to participating and to supporting what Nawara is doing as well. We are all Africans, Zimbabweans. I love everybody. And, we'll just keep up the faith. And I look forward to participating. Okay, I just want to thank each and every one of you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ikem. Boss Salani, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you so much, hosts and co-hosts. Much appreciated for the space. In my parting words, I just want to remind everybody that we are all Africans, and we should use these platforms to network. In the past week, when I was listening to what's going on in Nigeria, I understood one thing profoundly, that we have shared experiences, lived experiences. We're all going through the same bad governance issues in our own countries, and that makes us one. So if we can start to come together, to start to speak to one another, learn from each other, we'll be greater than ever before. There's something that people underestimate. In the words of Martin Luther King, he said he had a dream. We should all have a dream of where Africa is free from our dictators, free from our oppressors. Africa can work together. There is nothing that stops Africans from coming and trading with one another, making decisions together. It is a beacon of the world. We need to remember this every single time we engage with each other. And whenever you see things being said about any African state, if you know that it is wrong, speak the truth and say it's wrong, so that we can become create an environment for future generations to come. That is why we are here. We are what is needed to create a better Africa. So I guess what I'm in my part in shorts, I'm going to say, these are the platforms we need to start talking. Let's start networking. Let's start building a greater, stronger Africa for each and every one of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Selani. Mr. Charles, you have 30 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I would just want to say, yes, we are having problems as Africans. We are having bad governance problems, but let's not play much of blame games. Let's solve the situation. We are given an opportunity to choose whom do we want to govern us or to lead us. Let's take, for example, in Zimbabwe, the elections are coming. But what are we doing as citizens? Are we encouraging those who haven't registered to vote to register to vote? And at the same time, after registering to vote, are we educating them what is it that we want to vote for? Because some other people just vote for the person who comes to them in front of them, but they don't know what is it that they are voting for. So I would say, as oppositions are the people who normally complains much, show that you are alternatives. Don't just wait for these ruling parties to reform themselves. They can't reform themselves. But what you can only do is just to show that you're true and genuine opposition, or you're the true and genuine alternative. In so doing, we can solve our problems of bad governance. If we don't do so, we'll continue in vicious cycles of bad governance. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles. On this note, I will call the host to give us a conclusive statement. Nalowabi Barrister, you have the mic to give us a conclusion statement.
Oh, thank you very much, Fabrice. This wouldn't have been possible without you and all our speakers, especially those who came in at the last minute. We really do appreciate your time, your energy, everything you came in with. And we would like to apologize to those who couldn't speak today, but our next space is on the 2nd of April at 6 p.m. GMT +1, I guess Nigerian Cameroon time. You are more than welcome to participate in the space. Usually, we don't have the topics until normally people suggest the topics from sometimes the Instagram group. Sometimes people write inbox us and say, "Oh, we want you people to discuss this." So if there is any topic that people are interested in, you can just inbox Fabrice or myself, and we will look at it. It's a democracy, and whichever gets the highest vote, then we get to talk about it. So I want to thank the initial speakers. Most of them seem to have left, but I'm very happy that all of them were able to make it today. And now we get to understand that what is going on in Zimbabwe basically is what is going on in Cameroon, is what is going on in Nigeria. It's basically the same everywhere. We just need to look for possible and practical solutions to our problems. Thank you once more, and I wish you all a good night. I don't know wherever you are, where I am. It's past 10 p.m. Fabrice?
Yes, thank you so much, Blessed host. You're a very flexible, admirable woman of substance, and I would like other women of the African continent to be like you, or even more than you. And we
Hello? Can anyone hear me? Okay, Fabrice, are you there? Okay, Bernard, I guess you didn't speak, so maybe we just give you 30 seconds to speak. You were one of the initial speakers.
Well, I need to join the many people in congratulating you for the very brilliant work that you are doing. I also want to express my unhappiness that when we are talking about continent-wide issues, people have chosen to get engrossed in their partisan positions. The issues of our various villages that we call countries cannot be solved by the partisan posture that I have just witnessed from the Zimbabwean people. Partisanship away, national cause must reflect the continental discourse. When people are here to defend ZANU-PF, or they are here to defend the People's National Convention, or they are here to defend the APC or whichever political party, then we would have failed from the beginning, even as we want to achieve something of monumental change. So I want each and every one of us going forward to jettison the partisanship, put on a national and continental cloth, so that we'll be able to have the eyes to see the issues that pervade us, the micro issues that confront our countries on the basis of the partisanship. When we bring them on a bigger platform like this, it exposes our level of weakness. And I am just a bit disappointed that I saw much more partisanship than continental or national concerns that afflict us. When we don't have food to eat, it doesn't matter whether your political party is in power. When there is a shortage of fuel, it doesn't matter whether your political party is in opposition. When the healthcare system is broken down, it doesn't matter whether you are in position in your government. All of us are afflicted. What are the solutions that we are proposing? Given that our continent is virtually becoming a pariah in the midst of plenty, and our leaders keep trotting from one end to the other, seeking solution outside of the continent when there is solution within Africa, I will call for the fact that we should stay in Africa. When I say stay in Africa, it includes every diasporan should have an eye towards the African continent. That is the only way we will be able to make Africa greater than it is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard. And I hope that after today, a lot of us have something to take back home. So we are going to end for today. And on the 2nd of April, hopefully that we all gather here again to keep the discussion going. Thank you very much and have a good night, good day wherever you are.